Yan Wu's steps slow as she approaches Yun Qi, but it's not injury that's making her hesitate. It's the black energy waiting in his outstretched hand. 3 Yama ancestors force Tian Guhu to his knees before he can even draw a breath. Subscribe to see what happens when a divine sovereign stops asking politely. Warabe, Yan Xianxia warned seriously. Yan Wu took off, but her footsteps were unusually stiff and slow. Yan Jai had hurt her pretty badly, but it obviously wasn't so bad that it would slow her this much. In the end, though, no matter how slow she was walking, it was only a matter of time before she arrived before Yun Qi. She bowed toward him and asked in a chilly tone, "What are your instructions, my lord?" Instead of answering, Yun Qi extended his hand and sent a wisp of black energy toward Yan Wu. Yan Wu's eyes immediately turned icy, but her father growled at her from behind. "Do not resist!" So Yan Wu forced herself to stay still and gritted her teeth. Her entire body was shaking slightly in trepidation. Meanwhile, the black energy had invaded all the way into her profound veins, utterly uncaring if she consented to the act or not. However, her trepidation and her hostility only lasted several breaths. Her eyes grew unfocused when she noticed the changes within her body, and her excitement and disbelief grew exponentially when the full scale of her transformation slowly dawned upon her. Yun Qi withdrew his arm and the dark energy after he was finished. Yan Wu stood where she was and stared at herself for a very long time. Her disbelief looked like a permanent fixture on her face, and she looked like she had fallen into a dream. Suddenly, the proud woman bowed again, but this time she had dropped to one knee instead of just bending her waist. The chilliness in her voice had been completely replaced by a kind of excitement that could only come from the bottom of one's soul. Yan Wu, thanks you for your blessing, my lord." Yan Wu had a legendary temper. There was no one in the whole realm who didn't know about it. Even Yan Xianxia himself seldom saw such a deep look of gratitude and respect coming from Yan Wu. Surprised and puzzled, Yan Xianxia walked up to Yan Wu and put a finger to her shoulder. In that moment, disbelief and excitement overcame his expression just like Yan Wu's, and he muttered to himself in a daze, The rumors regarding the witches are actually true. HMPH. One of the reasons the Burning Moon Realm submitted as quickly as it did was because they had seen the witch's transformation with their own eyes. Yun Qi said indifferently, while his hand glowed with devilish light. "This probably looks like a miracle to you people, but to me, it is just something I can do anytime I feel like it." Yan Xianxia also knelt next to Yan Wu, and this time it didn't feel nearly as difficult as the previous times. "Please grant your blessing to the Yama devils, my lord. We will forever remember your favor and serve you with everything we have." Once again, he was made to witness the true power of eternal calamity of darkness. The power to manipulate the dark energies of the bone sea of eternal darkness however he liked. The power to create miracles that transcended common sense itself at the wave of a hand. He was sure that this wasn't all the eternal calamity of darkness could do. In this moment, he even started to feel like it was his duty to serve the new master of the northern divine region. "I will give my blessing to most Yama devils, but in exchange I want your loyalty." Yun Qi spoke very slowly so that no one could miss his words. "Don't say I didn't warn all of you. Once you've sworn to serve me, there is no turning back." Yan Xianxia looked up and stared at Yun Qi directly. He knew how he should act in a situation like this. "My lord, you are the only inheritor of the great devil emperor. You are also the only person ever to have beaten us completely. There is no one else who deserves our loyalty besides you, my lord." "Very good." Yun Qi praised him before rising to his feet. When he walked away, the 3 Yama ancestors followed him closely so as to protect him from any danger. "I have 2 things I would like you to do. Please share with me your thoughts, my lord," Yan Xianxia said seriously. "1, you will order everyone to keep today's occurrence a secret, especially from the soul-stealing realm." These days, he couldn't think of Kai Waya without feeling a surge of black emotions. Yan Xianxia frowned a little before replying. "My lord, I think it's already too late. Your power has shaken the world itself, and there are countless spies from soul-stealing realm in our lands. I highly doubt the lockdown will be in time at all. It doesn't have to be. The appearance of trying is good enough." Yun Qi narrowed his eyes a little. Yan Xianxia thought to himself for a moment before answering, "It will be done, my lord." 2. Yun Qi shot Yan Xianxia a sideways glance. "You will send someone to the Imperial Heaven Realm and bring a man to me. I would prefer it if you can keep it a secret, but it doesn't matter in the long run if you fail." Imperial Heaven Realm. Yan Xianxia raised his eyebrows slightly. That was where Yun Qi had killed the leader of the Yama ghosts, Yan Sanjiang. At the time, he was so angry that he ordered his men to capture Yun Qi at all costs. He even went so far as to send 3 Yama devils to the soul-stealing realm and demand Yun Qi. At the time, he had no idea what an absolute monster Yun Qi was, of course. "Who is this man you wish for us to escort, my lord?" he asked cautiously. Yun Qi looked up before replying in a quiet tone, "Tian Guhu." Not only was Tian Guhu the strongest profound practitioner of the younger generation, he could even fight opponents who were several levels above him. It was so that even Yan Xianxia, a god emperor, had heard about him and taken the effort to study him. Yan Xianxia didn't ask any further questions. He simply turned around and ordered his men. "Yan Yi, head to Imperial Heaven Realm yourself and bring Tian Guhu over. You will go immediately." Usually, it was beneath Yama Devil to bring a normal denizen of an upper star realm to the Yama Realm themselves. However, the Imperial Heaven Realm was inferior only when compared to the King Realms of the Northern Divine region, and Tian Guhu was extremely famous among his juniors. Finally, the order had come from Yun Qi himself, so it wasn't surprising nor excessive to send a Yama Devil to retrieve Tian Guhu. "Yes." Yan Yi accepted his orders and flashed out of the room. "Yan 1, 2, 3, follow me," Yun Qi ordered. Yan Xianxia said, "Where are you heading to, my lord?" Yun Qi walked past him without pausing his footsteps. He merely said, "Focus on performing your duties and don't ask unnecessary questions." In the past, Yan Xianxia was the one who did the admonishing, not the other way around. But since he hadn't recovered from Yan Wu's great transformation, he was able to enter his role quickly and answer, "You are right, my lord. Best wishes to you, my lord." Yun Qi and the 3 Yama ancestors left the hall without a word. They seemed to be heading to the bone sea of eternal darkness. For a time, the Imperial Hall was oppressively silent. A while later, Yan Tu finally spoke up carefully. "Your Majesty, are we really going to?" For now, it looked like nothing had changed in the Yama realm. The Yama Emperor was still the Yama Emperor. The Yama Devils were still the Yama Devils. Yama Imperial District wasn't occupied or held hostage by the enemy. They didn't even lose any freedom whatsoever. If they had to count their losses, then there were the buildings and Yan Jai, although the latter was definitely a good thing. Had he shown his true colors after he became the Yama Emperor of the Yama Realm, they couldn't even imagine what would have happened to their country. The fact that Yun Qi hadn't changed anything or tried to restrict them at all meant that they could betray him anytime they wanted. However, the fact that he was so lax was a sign that their new lord wasn't worried in the slightest. That itself said a lot. Instead of replying immediately, Yan Xianxia turned toward his daughter and asked, What do you think?" Yan Wu pulled her attention away from her body and said, I think I can leave the Northern Divine region now and still recover and manipulate darkness profound energy almost as well as I am now." What she said shocked absolutely everyone. "Your Highness, you mean?" Yan Tu asked urgently. "A long time ago, Kai Weiao tried more than once to persuade my royal father to work with her and tear down our cage together. However, it was only a pipe dream at that time." Yan Wu was speaking in a frigid tone, but it wasn't the intimidating, imperialistic tone that she usually used when she spoke to inferiors. It was the cold chill of forming determination. "But Yun Qi is different. He meant what he said and he has the power to carry it out." Yan Wu looked around her before saying, "We only live once. It would be too boring and frustrating to hole up in the darkness forever, don't you think? With a chance like this and a leader like him, why don't we give it a shot and try to overturn our fates? We may end up dead and destroyed, but at least we would have been worthy of this land of darkness that gave birth to us and the power we inherited." Yan Wu's words shook everyone. Earlier, she was the one who showed the most resistance out of all of them. No one was expecting her to change this drastically after Yun Qi touched her. Yan Xianxia started calmly. "You mean to say, I have decided to follow him?" Yan Wu declared resolutely and without any hesitation. Hearsay would never be as convincing as personal experience. "Are you sure?" Yan Xianxia asked again. "Yes, I will never regret my decision." Yan Wu raised her hand and summoned a cycle of darkness. "Once upon a time, I was a half-cripple the second I stepped out of the Northern Divine region, and any talk of resistance was nothing but a joke. But now, I can't wait to unleash my powers on the soil of the 3 divine regions. I want them to feel the hatred and anger we've stored in our hearts for countless years." Bang! She clenched her hand, and the small globe of darkness exploded in her palm. She looked down and said, "Don't be surprised by my change of attitude. You'll understand what I mean when you have received the same blessing as me. I think I'm starting to understand why the ancestors made the decision they did. It was true that the Yama devils and Yama ghosts still couldn't understand Yan Wu's change and transformation at all, but her drastic change in behavior did make them a lot more accepting of Yun Qi. Good, Yan Xianxia nodded slowly. He understood now why Yun Qi had chosen Yan Wu as his first subject of transformation. It wasn't a random choice. Remember what he said. Once you've sworn to serve him, there is no turning back. Yan Xianxia warned solemnly. No, we've all seen how ruthless he is. Like it or not, it's already too late to turn back, Yan Wu said indifferently. I would much prefer to die on the soil of the 3 divine regions than in his hands. I would have at least achieved something. Her attitude had completely turned around since she was blessed by Yun Qi. In fact, she would probably be the first one to step out and kill anyone who tried to rebel at this stage. Heh. Yan Xianxia chuckled amiably. Despite being the Yama Emperor, he didn't have any criticism to offer Yan Wu. War is right. No matter what you think or feel right now, never forget that Yun Qi is above me. You have all seen with your own eyes his worthiness and his power. At the very least, you should never display any disobedience in front of him. Finally, Yan Xianxia sent out the order. Now go carry out our Lord's order and lock down the rumors as quickly as you can. At the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness. Yun Qi was back with the 3 Yama ancestors, but he wasn't here to cultivate his powers. Instead, he flew toward the edge of the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness. Along the way, he kept seeing purple light in his vision. It was the purple light of the netherworld Udambara flower. At his level of strength, these terrible flowers couldn't affect his soul any longer. He never tried to look at them either. After all that would do was drag his heart and soul into a dark, painful abyss he never wanted to remember. Yun Qi eventually came to a stop. He was staring at a devil crystal with mysterious dark light circulating throughout its body. These devil crystals were scattered at the edge of the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness. The oddly shaped crystals looked like they were naturally formed. The phosphorus lighting bouncing off their surface gave them a dark and dreamy appearance. Yun Qi bent downward and tried to touch the black crystals, but the 3 Yama ancestors cried out at the same time. Don't touch it, master. Yun Qi froze in mid-movement. Yan Wu said, these devil crystals are the crystallization of the ancient yin energy in this place. They take an incredibly long time to form. Although they look similar to a normal devil crystal, the dark energy they contain is incredibly dense and unstable. Any physical contact at all will result in a violent backlash. Yan Tu said, we've tried to master its power before, but it proved to be an impossible task even if all 3 of our powers were combined. The consequences were so great that we dared not even get close to it. Ah! Yan Tu suddenly exclaimed in shock. It was because Yun Qi had ignored their warning and touched the black crystal. However, the backlash they imagined didn't happen. The black crystal didn't even react whatsoever. As the 3 Yama ancestors let out a long sigh of relief, Yan 3 said, you 2 always talk nonsense. There's no way our master would be hurt by something as pathetic as the devil crystal of eternal darkness. Yes, you're right. We were overly cautious. Yan 1 and Yan 2 nodded hurriedly. Meanwhile, Yun Qi had removed his hands from the crystal and was narrowing his eyes slightly. A series of thoughts were spinning rapidly inside his head. Crystals were without a doubt the most stable form of energy. It was why all kinds of profound crystals were used to improve one's cultivation, forge formations and artifacts, and even traded as currencies. However, this so-called devil crystal of eternal darkness was completely different from the usual darkness crystal. The second Yun Qi had made physical contact with it. The energy residing inside it had awakened violently like a devil god that was woken up from its sleep. These unusual crystals were the product of time and crystallization of the primal yin energy in this place, or more specifically, the death energy of the ancient devils who died here. Even he could only imagine how much hatred and killing intent their death energy contained when they perished in the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness. Yun Qi slowly looked around him. He only spotted a couple of devil crystals in this area, but the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness was gigantic. He had no doubt that he could gather a mountain of devil crystals if he tried. The corner of Yun Qi's mouth slowly turned up. The end result looked something like the sinister smile of a bloodthirsty monster. Behind him, all 3 Yama ancestors shivered in unison. Wyo slowly floated down toward the ground before landing gracefully. The moment her toes touched the ground, her black robe wrapped around her. unintentionally showing off every bewitching curve of her sultry body. "Master!" A voice rang out in the distance just as she appeared. After that voice rang out in the air, a girl's figure soon swirled into existence in front of Kai Waiao. Her face was as beautiful as exquisite jade, and her skin was the color of cream. Her exquisite lips were as red as rubies even though she had not applied any rouge. Her bright eyes were especially eye-catching. Strange colors rippled in those clear and limpid pools, and they looked both pure and alluring. Her elegant and airy robe clung to her body at her waist, and the colorful and enchanting light that shone from her body clearly stated her identity. "The soul-stealing realm's seventh witch Hua Jin? What's the matter?" Kai Waiao asked. "Reporting to Master, something huge has happened in the Yama Realm. The Yama barrier collapsed for no reason, and the three Yama ancestors left the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness and publicly proclaimed Xianxia their new master. After that, the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness itself shook, and black clouds filled the skies. All of these events seem to have something to do with Xianxia." Kai Waiao: "We still don't have the details of what happened next, but it's very likely that the Yama Emperor has reached some sort of compromise with Xianxia." "I was already aware of these things," replied Kai Waiao. Hua Jin's voice was filled with anxiety and worry, but Kai Waiao's voice was exceptionally calm and serene. Not a single ripple could be heard within it. He had long planned to go to the Yama Realm even before we headed out to the Burning Moon Realm. He already said that there was a possibility that he could use the eternal calamity of darkness to control the dark yin energy in the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness. He intended to use that to deal with the three Yama ancestors and coerce the Yama Realm. It looks like he succeeded beyond even his wildest expectations. To think that the mighty three Yama ancestors were willing to accept him as their master. He has yet again accomplished something that no one could even imagine. Kai Waiao let out a very soft laugh. It seems like he really was holding back at that time. As she observed the change in Kai Waiao's expression, Hua Jin could no longer hold herself back. She asked, "Master, why does it seem like you're completely unconcerned about this?" "What is there to worry about?" Kai Waiao said in a relaxed voice. Hua Jin said in a worried voice, "There is one thing that we've confirmed, and that is the matter of the three Yama ancestors recognizing Xianxia as their master. Furthermore, the three Yama ancestors personally said that Xianxia has freed them from the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness. This should be the main reason why they were willing to take Xianxia as their master. As for what happened after that, it is clear that the Yama Realm ended up reaching a compromise with Xianxia. If Xianxia is now able to mobilize the forces of the Yama Realm, you're worried that he will use this opportunity to suppress our soul-stealing realm?" Kai Waiao asked. Her voice did not falter in the slightest when she said those words. "Yes," Hua Jin bent her head. "Previously, Xianxia and Xianxia were alone and friendless in the northern region, but Master was willing to strike a deal with them as equals. But now, if he has truly gained full control of the Yama Realm, the full might of the forces at his disposal, which include the terrifying three Yama ancestors, Don't worry, he won't do such a thing," Kai Waiao replied with a faint smile. "Uniting the three king realms was always a shared goal of ours. It's just that he has accomplished this goal with his own strength." "Master, there's something you're unaware of," Hua Jin said. "The Yama realms swiftly closed off their borders after that, and our spies were all pushed far away. It will be very hard for us to get any more information in the meantime. Right now, more than 20 hours have passed, and Xianxia shows no sign of returning. In fact, he has not even sent any news back to us." Kai Waiao said, "Such a huge event occurred, so there's no real way to hide it. This forceful intervention is probably Xianxia's way of sending us a message." Hua Jin's head jerked up in shock. "Master, since you already know about this, then why don't you look the least bit concerned?" Kai Waiao smiled faintly and stretched out a jade hand, her delicate fingers gently brushing Hua Jin's cherry lips. "Don't you worry, he won't become our enemy. He won't ever be our enemy." Hua Jin's lips parted involuntarily. She did not understand where Kai Waiao's confidence came from, but the only thing she needed to do when it came to her master's words was to obey them. "There isn't any need to find out what's happening in the Yama Realm," Kai Waiao continued. "In fact, there's only one thing I need you to do right now. Send something over to the Yama Realm for me." "What do you want me to deliver?" Hua Jin asked. "An invitation card." Hua Jin left with many misgivings in her heart. Kai Waiao gently turned her body in the direction of the Yama Realm. Then she let out a soft and gloomy sigh. In the end, the will of heaven will always be stronger than the schemes of man. Everything has happened far too early. But this is fine too. From the beginning to the end, I am also my own pawn. Several days passed before Xianxia emerged from the bone sea of eternal darkness. Yan Wu had personally been standing guard over the entrance of the bone sea of eternal darkness all this while. The moment she saw Xianxia, she gave him a deep bow and said, "Yan Wu greets my lord. Yan Wu greets the ancestors." Compared to the frigid scowl she had worn on her face just a few days ago along with the sharp and icy glares she used to give Xianxia before, Yan Wu's attitude had undergone a drastic change. "Have you found the person I'm looking for?" Xianxia asked in a calm voice. "Reporting to my lord, we have already brought that person here 12 hours ago, and we did not leave behind any tracks. Only a few people from the Imperial Heaven Realm are aware of this matter," Yan Wu reported to Xianxia. "Very good." Xianxi's gaze swept past her as he walked towards the Imperial Hall. Tian Guhu had been brought to the Yama Realm in a daze. The news of the Yama Realm's dramatic transformation had not yet reached the Imperial Heaven Realm when Yan Yi came to get him. Tian Guhu had suffered a miserable defeat to Xianxia in front of all the other heavenly sovereigns and notable figures of the northern divine region during the Heavenly Sovereign Assembly. However, his defeat had not created any lasting trauma for Tian Guhu. On the contrary, the words that Xianxia had left him had greatly shaken his conceited beliefs. The Yama Emperor had given an order summoning him to the Yama Realm, and a Yama Devil had personally arrived to escort him there. Even though Imperial Heaven Realm King Tian Muyi had great misgivings about this, he did not dare go against the summons. Instead, he had been determined to follow him here, and it was Tian Guhu who had persuaded him not to. So Tian Guhu had followed Yan Yi back to the Yama Realm by himself. Even though Tian Guhu was the most heralded youngster in the northern divine region, the most famous person in his generation, none of these things applied to the King Realms. They existed a level above the rest of them. The Imperial Heaven Realm had been friendly with the Yama Realm for generations, but once someone scratched the surface, this friendly relationship undoubtedly turned into a relationship between a superior and subordinate. Furthermore, it was a gap of superiority that the lesser person could never hope to overcome. Even with Tian Guhu's status, it was exceedingly rare for him to see someone like the former leader of the Yama Ghosts, Yan Sanjiang, much less people like the Yama Devils or the Yama Emperor. One could only imagine how badly Tian Guhu's heart was shaken upon seeing the fabled Yama Devils as he entered the Imperial Hall. His eyes quivered with reverence and fear as he looked towards the center of the Imperial Hall. His feet froze and his eyes widened dramatically when he saw what was before him. He could not bring himself to believe what he was seeing, no matter how hard he tried. The Emperor of the Yama Realm, Yan Xianxia. Tian Guhu had the fortune to see him once when he had followed his father here after entering the Northern Region Heavenly Sovereign ranking. However, the strongest and most exalted God Emperor in his eyes was actually standing to the side of the throne, and the person who was seated on that throne was Xianxia. "Tian Guhu," Xianxia said in a cool voice, "it's been a few months since we last met. Do you still remember me?" "Xianxia." Tian Guhu's voice trembled as he blurted out that name in shock. He checked his surroundings once more, but he still could not bring himself to believe what he was seeing. These days, the entire northern divine region had been shaken by the name Xianxia. He was the inheritor of a devil emperor's legacy, and he had unleashed the power of a true god to cut the burning moon god emperor down in the heart of his own realm. It had been such a shocking sight that the moon eaters had given up without a fight. There were even rumors that he was going to be crowned emperor of the soul-stealing realm. Each rumor was more shocking and unbelievable than the next, however. News of Fen Daejun's death and the Burning Moon Realm's surrender soon followed, and these rumors became irrefutable facts. When everyone heard the news, it literally took their breath away. It was also this news that caused the words that Xianxia had said to Tian Guhu to reverberate in his heart more and more violently. In fact, his emotions had become so strong and intense in the last few days that he had been seized by the impulse to rush over to the soul-stealing realm to beg for an audience more than 10 times, and had almost given in. But he had never dreamed that he would get his desired meeting in the Yama realm. He had never dreamed that he would meet Xianxia again when he was sitting on the throne that only the Yama Emperor could touch. This was a scene that would astound anyone, a scene that utterly boggled the mind. "Tian Guhu," Xianxia said with narrowed eyes, his gaze becoming exceptionally sharp. "This is such a minor occasion, but you've reacted in such an ugly manner. Do your so-called pride and aspirations only amount to this much?" Yun Qi's words were like a hammer smashing against Tian Guhu's heart. His soul shuddered as he secretly bit down on the tip of his tongue. His mind finally regained some clarity amidst that intense pain. He slowly sucked in a breath of air as he gave a solemn and respectful bow. Imperial Heaven Realms, Tian Guhu has come to visit the Yama Realm. It is my great honor to be able to see Senior Yun, the Yama Emperor, and all of the Yama Devils. Yun Qi did not reply. Instead, he slowly got to his feet and began walking in his direction. As he stood up, the three Yama ancestors hurriedly followed behind him. Tian Guhu had never seen the three stooped and ugly old men behind Yun Qi before, but when he looked at them, just when he looked at them, he felt his soul go numb as it soundlessly quaked. It was as if an invisible claw had seized him so tightly that he could not even hope to struggle free. A claw that only needed an instant to consign him to the eternal abyss of death. He had only felt such a sensation when he had paid a visit to the Yama Emperor all those years ago. Given his current cultivation, his mind was far stronger than it had been before. Yet the three old men behind Yun Qi made him feel the same frightening sensation he had felt back then. Tian Guhu's incredible astonishment had caused his body to tremble all over, an action that he was entirely incapable of controlling. However, he forced himself to stand up straight as he fiercely fought to keep his gaze calm and aloof. He was well aware that a piece of trash that would sink to his knees due to the other person's aura would never be respected. "I heard that you gave yourself the name Tian Guhu." Yun Qi walked toward him. When he finally spoke again, he was only a few steps away from Tian Guhu. "You were infuriated by the fact that everyone around you was content to be trapped inside this prison. They either lived dispirited lives or sought to kill one another for personal gain. Not only did they have no determination to defy their fate, they were even active participants in digging their own grave. A grave that was already as deep as an abyss." Tian Guhu's heart was violently shaken by those words. He slowly nodded his head as he replied, "Yes. But what did these high-minded aspirations amount to? I, Tian Guhu, am not only alone in these aspirations, but I am also nothing more than a piece of trash who can't even cause a single ripple as the northern divine region tumbles toward its inevitable fate." "You're very self-aware," Yun Qi said coolly. "No matter how high-minded your aspirations are, they will be nothing more than a fatuous joke if you do not possess sufficient power." Tian Guhu clenched his teeth. "Then I will give you an opportunity." Yun Qi gave him a deep look as he said those words. "I can give you power that exceeds your father's, but I have one condition. I want you to become the spear that breaks out of the cage that is the northern divine region, a spear that will pierce into the three other divine regions, a spear that can break at any instant. Do you dare to accept this condition?" Tian Guhu was utterly stunned by those words. For a moment he even suspected his hearing had gone awry. "What did you say?" "You don't need to doubt my words or worry whether I can accomplish what I said or not. You only need to give me one answer. Do you dare, or do you not dare?" The Yama ancestors were behind him and the Yama Emperor, and his Yama devils formed a ring around them. Yun Qi's every word evoked a spiritual pressure that was no less heavy than the might of a god emperor. They brooked no suspicion. Tian Guhu's mind swam in confusion, but his will and beliefs had received an incredibly violent blow. He practically spoke without thinking when he gave his reply. "This is something I have dreamed of my entire life, an opportunity that I've been begging for. Why wouldn't I dare?" "Very good." Yun Qi praised him in a cold and calm voice. After that, his brows suddenly sank. "Restrain him." As he gave that order, the three Yama ancestors immediately appeared around Tian Guhu. They simultaneously released their power, instantly forcing Tian Guhu to his knees. His power had been utterly suppressed, and he could not even move a single muscle. Tian Guhu had the strength to fight against level 10 divine sovereigns, despite only being a level 7 divine sovereign. But he was nothing more than a pitiful worm in front of a Yama ancestor. The Yama ancestors were so powerful that it was downright degrading to make them suppress a divine sovereign personally, much less all three at once. But Yun Qi's order was absolute, and that was that. Tian Guhu's knees hit the ground with a resounding crack. He felt like a million mountains were sitting on his shoulders, and the only body part he could still move was his eyeballs. He didn't try to struggle, however. Any one of the powers suppressing him right now could wipe out his very existence in the blink of an eye. Resist. Was that a joke? Bang. Yun Qi summoned a pitch-black cauldron before dropping it heavily before Tian Guhu. It was none other than the devil origin artifact of Yama Realm, the Yama Devil Nether Crossing Cauldron. Every Yama devil in the room was stunned by Yun Qi's actions. Is he planning to? Yan Xianxia turned cold when a memory flashed across his mind. He subconsciously raised his foot to take a step forward, but immediately restrained both his footsteps and the words that were about to tumble out of his mouth. Yun Qi's palm swam slowly above the cauldron. When he lifted his palm, a pitch-black flame rose from the cauldron and came to a stop between his fingers. All light inside the imperial hall was devoured by the darkness of that black flame the moment it appeared. Its presence also pierced through everyone's eyes and filled up their heart and soul. It was because it was the devil origin power of the Yama devils, the origin power of a primordial true devil. The origin power of a true devil could be passed down to a chosen successor, but it could never be controlled directly. There had never been a Yama emperor who was able to interfere with its will. But now, it was doing Yun Qi's bidding without any resistance whatsoever. Although everyone here had been made to witness all kinds of impossible things by Yun Qi himself, the scene before them still shook them greatly. "This is the devil origin power of the Yama devils," Yun Qi said slowly. The devil origin power was floating right before his eyes, but it couldn't affect the dark gleam in his eyes one bit. "This thing here will grant you power no one in the world even dares to dream of in a million lifetimes, all in a single day. Let's hope that you'll live up to your namesake, Lonely Swan." Before Tian Guhu could give any response, he pressed the black light into Tian Guhu's forehead. Bzz, there was a low rumble as the aura of the Yama devil spilled out of the black flame like a flood. Tian Guhu's figure was consumed by it in just an instant. Arg, the divine sovereign let out a scream of pain initially, but he held it in almost immediately. After that, he never let out a squeak even when his teeth started breaking loudly from the sheer force he was applying to them. All Yama devils revered their devil origin power as a matter of course. Although the Yama devil nether-crossing cauldron could withdraw its power from any Yama devil, it also had a special restriction where it could only be passed down to people who possessed the Yama devil bloodline. Tian Guhu didn't have any Yama devil bloodline in him, so it was only natural that he wouldn't be accepted by the Yama devil origin power. Could Yun Qi really force it to pass down its power to a stranger with no relations to it whatsoever? "Your Majesty, this." Yan Yi sent a sound transmission to Yan Xianxia. Since time immemorial, the Yama devil's power had always belonged to the Yama devils and no one else. If Yun Qi actually succeeded at what he was doing, it was the equivalent of giving away their power to an outsider. "Keep quiet," Yan Xianxia berated him. An hour passed, then 2 hours passed. Bang. A huge explosion later, the dark light and the dark aura that engulfed the entire imperial hall in darkness vanished completely. Tian Guhu's limp figure appeared before everyone. The young man was panting and sweating heavily on the ground, and a layer of darkness was circulating slowly inside his body. His aura was completely different from what it was before. When Tian Guhu slowly looked up and opened his eyes, a black gleam flashed across his pupils. Yan Xianxia clenched his fists in silence and felt a terrible itch on his scalp. The Yama devil's reactions were even worse than his. Although Tian Guhu looked incredibly weak right now, his aura was clearly that of a level 8 divine master. Normally, it took several days to inject a devil origin power into a Yama devil's body and synchronize them fully. But Tian Guhu, a complete outsider that was in no way accepted by the Yama devil origin power, was able to gain its power, and the inheritance was completed in just 2 hours' time. Although it was still a little unstable, the Yama devil aura emanating from Tian Guhu's body was practically perfect. They couldn't sense any signs of aura disruption or rejection from him at all. The Yama devils couldn't even begin to describe their shock. Bang! Tian Guhu's knees hit the ground again as he bowed his head deeply before Yun Qi. He said, "From this day onward, Tian Guhu's life belongs to Senior Yun and no other." "No, you are wrong." Yun Qi stared at Tian Guhu from an elevated position. "Your life belongs only to yourself. You don't need to betray your home realm, nor do you need to force yourself to serve the Yama realm. You are still Tian Guhu. You are not a Yama devil. I have never wanted to own your life. What I want is your will." Tian Guhu looked him in the eye and swore the words that he would engrave to his soul. "My will needs your guidance, Senior. You are the only one who is qualified to guide me." "In that case," Yun Qi said while turning his back on Tian Guhu, "I order you to stay in the bone sea of eternal darkness until you have fully acclimated to the power you bear. Then you may return to the imperial heaven realm. After that," Yun Qi paused for a second before continuing, "the greatest value you have isn't the Yama devil power you just inherited, but the influence you have over the northern divine region, especially among the divine sovereigns and the younger profound practitioners. Do you understand what I'm saying? Tian Guhu engraved every word Yun Qi said into his heart. His blood was boiling. He could sense that the dream he once thought to be forever out of his reach now floating right in front of him. Guhu understands. Guhu will not disappoint Senior. Tian Guhu did his best to control his excitement before declaring unhesitatingly. You will now head to the bone sea of eternal darkness. Yan Tu, you will help him acclimatize to his power. This servant will obey your command, master, Yan Tu replied hurriedly. At the very end, Yun Qi emphasized. Also, do not address me as Senior again. Tian Guhu blanked out for a second before bowing deeply. Yes. Rumors of Yun Qi had positively flooded the entire northern divine region as of late, so of course he was aware that the great man before him was only 30 years old or so. The reason he had naturally addressed Yun Qi as Senior was because he had felt like a tall mountain that might never be overcome. Yan Tu led Tian Guhu away after that. With Yan Tu's aid, he was sure that Tian Guhu would adapt to his newly inherited powers in no time. With this, he had gained a loyal power that was destined to have great effects in his future plans. Please wait, my lord. There is something that only you can attend to. Yan Xianxia called out to Yun Qi just when he was about to take his leave. The Yama Emperor was holding a jade tablet with a thin whiff of dark energy around it. Yun Qi narrowed his eyes slightly. He immediately identified the dark energy to be the dark aura of the soul-stealing realm. Is it something the Devil Queen sent over? Yun Qi asked indifferently. He didn't touch the tablet. It is the invitation card the 7th witch herself delivered the day before yesterday, Yan Xianxia answered. Invitation card? Yun Qi frowned slightly. And what is the time? 7 days from now, Yan Xianxia answered. The Devil Queen herself will be arriving. She also mentioned specifically that you are the one she wants to meet, not me. 7 days? Yun Qi's frown grew deeper before he let out a sneer. That's a curiosity. She normally just barges through any door she wishes to enter before the host can react. An invitation letter, time to prepare, truly a curiosity. I was hoping that she would descend from the heavens with her entourage of witches out of nowhere and pleasantly surprise me, Yun Qi said with a small grin, but the gleam in his eyes was shockingly dark. Yan Xianxia was starting to realize that Yun Qi wasn't just planning to take over the soul-stealing realm. If his observation was correct, the two of them seemed to share a deep grudge. What should we do, my lord? Yan Xianxia asked. Yun Qi thought for a moment before replying, the stupidest way to deal with this woman is to play her beloved tricks and schemes. She wants 7 days. Then I'll give her 7 days and wait for her to show up. But not here. As if realizing something, Yan Xianxia asked, are you going to? But he immediately realized his mistake and stopped himself. Forgive Xianxia for his slip of the tongue. I will return in 7 days, Yun Qi said. Work on the invitations for my coronation while I'm gone. Remember, the invitation extends to everyone. The upper star realms, the middle star realms, and especially the lower star realms. They are the key. You may choose the wording as you like. Yes, my lord. Yan Xianxia accepted the order before asking one last question. About the new Imperial Hall, do you have any preferences you'd like to mention, my lord? Unnecessary. Yun Qi was already gone when he left behind his reply. I don't need such useless things. Yun Qi had traveled to the desolate borders of a star realm subordinate to the Yama Realm. It was a dark and lifeless place. A wood spirit girl was sitting primly next to Yun Qi. A cold breeze carried her greenish hair lightly, caressing her face gently with her own hair. From time to time, she would sneak a glance at Yun Qi's face before turning back toward herself. The light in her jade-like eyes looked as beautiful as colored glass. She wasn't the only one who had manifested themselves to reality. Honger and Yuer were seated to the left and right sides of Yun Qi. One was gobbling down the black crystals Yun Qi gave her, and the other was nibbling at the desserts He Ling just finished making for her. Tasty, 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 Honger shouted 3 times in a row. Her cheeks were completely stuffed, and her red pupils were shining with excitement. Yuer was carefully holding her desserts and staring at Honger with her quad-colored pupils. She seemed to be envious that Honger could eat the black crystals like they were the tastiest things in the world. Gulp! Honger swallowed, and a flash of darkness flitted across her scarlet pupils. Then she grabbed onto Yun Qi's thighs and shouted, I want more. I had no idea that the northern divine region had something this tasty. Why didn't you give it to me earlier, master? Yun Qi gave her another 2 black crystals the size of a longan. These are the last 2 crystals for the day. He needed to save the rest, to accomplish a big dream. HMPH, still a miser I see. That was what Hunger said, but her movement wasn't slow in the slightest. She grabbed the 2 crystals in the blink of an eye, put them into her mouth, and started chewing happily. Some distance away, Yan 1 and Yan 3 were staring at Hunger eating the devil crystal of eternal darkness that they didn't even dare to touch and were shivering from head to toe. WHWHWHWHWHWHWH, what the hell is that monster? It took a while before Yan 1 was able to spit out the question. I don't know. Yan 3 shook his head before realizing what Yan 1 had done. He chided him in a low tone, "Pewee, where are you manners, old ghost? Master is the devil emperor incarnate, and he is as high as the heaven itself. It took 800,000 years of waiting to even get the opportunity to serve him. This girl is clearly close to our master, so it's only natural that she's beyond our understanding, just like our master. So how can you call her a monster? So rude." Yan 1 shivered in realization before nodding in agreement. Right, you're totally right. Master, why did you choose Tian Guhu? Healing asked quietly. The way Yun Qi was acting right now was the Yun Qi she loved the most. He would only smile like this when he was facing Hunger and Yuer. Yun Qi said, "The stronger a person's conviction is, the harder it is to twist. However, it also makes them easier to control once you understand what drives them. I gave him the chance to accomplish his impossible ambition, so it's only natural that he would repay me with his loyalty and his life. Moreover, Tian Guhu's personal reputation and influence were always going to dwarf mine, a newcomer. He is a useful weapon of unimaginable value." "Does that mean you helped him because you saw him as a potentially valuable tool, and not because you admire his spirit?" Healing asked. The look in her eyes changed a little when she said this. "Of course." Yun Qi looked toward the front. "Everything in the northern divine region is just a useful tool to me." "Does," Healing bowed her head and hid her doubt behind her eyes. "Does that mean I'm a tool to you as well?" Since the day Yun Qi requested to dual cultivate with her, Healing had never had a moment of peace. Before she knew it, she was assaulted by all kinds of confusion and doubt. She didn't understand why she was feeling like this. She had known that she would live and die as Yun Qi's possession since the day she turned herself into the poisoned spirit for revenge. However, her anxiety only grew the longer the thought weighed on her. Suddenly, she felt her small hands being grabbed by Yun Qi. He pulled her to her feet and said to her gently, "Come with me." Yinger was enshrouded in incomparably dense, profound light. The aura of her profound energy was extremely pure and clean, but it had also formed an exceptionally violent vortex around her. A vortex of energy which engulfed the space 5 kilometers around her. Yun Qi sensed the changes in Kyanai Yinger's aura. She had refined nearly half of the second untamed world pellet. This was going much faster than it had the last time, when she had taken a full half a year to refine the first pellet. However, this speed was something that Yun Qi had already predicted. Within half a month's time, Kyanai Yinger would successfully refine the second untamed world pellet. Once that happened, she would undoubtedly become his greatest strength, even if he counted the Yama ancestors and the Yama devils. He did not disturb Kyanai Yinger. Instead, Yun Qi held Healing's hand as he brought her to another area of the primordial profound arc. The world within the primordial profound arc was sparse and barren. It was very rare to see plants and flowers, and the occasional profound beast that appeared would always be a low-grade one. In order to reduce the primordial profound arc's energy consumption, Yun Qi had never tried to create a more fertile environment. Instead, he had just been maintaining it in a state where it would not collapse. He was naturally saving the rest of the energy for dimensional jumps in case they were caught in a bad situation. "Healing," Yun Qi gently said as he looked straight ahead, "you must think that I've become very frightening now." Healing's lips parted slightly, but she was lost in her own thoughts, so she did not reply. "I used to respect every life, used to value the destiny of every living person, but right now I only view them as one of 2 things. They are either useful tools or useless trash. Even when I faced off against my hated enemies in the past, I never killed them in a cruel manner or tortured them to death. Neither did I allow myself to lose my humanity when I fought my foes. But today, I can torture the 3 Yama ancestors in the cruelest of ways without even blinking an eye. 3 people who I didn't even have a single grievance against. I tortured them in ways that made them long for death for 6 straight days, but there wasn't a single trace of reluctance in my heart. I once viewed saving the God realm and the universe as a duty that I had to fulfill, and I had hoped that it would become the glory of my household, something that would protect us forever. But now I thirst to see the God realm wailing in pain and despair. Yet I don't even feel the least bit frightened by what I've become, and perhaps that's the most frightening thing of all. Yun-Chi slowly closed his eyes. His talent was singular, and he had an immeasurable future, one that was bound to break through all the limits of the current era. Yet he was missing one crucial component. He lacked the ambition to go with his talent, something that he sorely needed. Xianxia had said the same thing to him years ago, and so had Xia Qingyu. Even the heaven-smiting devil emperor had said those words to him. He understood what they were trying to tell him, but a person's desires and aspirations were not so easily changed. On the other hand, if the eternal heaven god emperor had not gone back on his word after the heaven-smiting devil emperor left, and the three divine regions had not acted against him out of fear, then it would have been a happily ever after for everyone involved. Yun-Chi would have returned to the blue pole star with Jasmine, and even if he did return to the God realm, it would only be to visit the Snow Song realm or Xianxia. Even if Yun-Chi truly did break through the limits of this current age and surpass the evil infant, the worries of all the powerhouses in the God realm would never have come to pass. Because that was Yun-Chi's true nature, his greatest wish and desire, and it would never have changed. However, their fear toward the evil infant and Yun-Chi's future growth caused them to bare their cruel fangs at the Messiah who had just fulfilled his duty. They had never in their wildest dreams imagined that when Yun-Chi was forced to pursue strength, he would become such a dreadful monster. "Master," He-Ling said as she looked at him. Her green pupils trembled, and her gentle voice was as light and airy as the wind. "This isn't your fault. None of it is. Even if you end up destroying the three divine regions in the future, you are merely withdrawing the mercy you had shown to them previously." Perhaps no one would believe that these words would come out from the mouth of a wood spirit. Yun-Chi suddenly turned to look at her. He smiled as he gazed upon He-Ling's beautiful face. Her expression was slightly dazed as he whispered to her, "Actually, you don't need to worry about me. Because you, Hunger, and you still exist in my world, I will never abandon the last vestiges of my humanity." His words had plucked at the flustered strings of her heart. He-Ling's lips parted slightly as an ethereal mist descended upon those beautiful emerald eyes. He-Ling had borne witness to the changes that had occurred within Yun-Chi over the last few years. The current him oozed a terrifyingly dark and oppressive might, to the point where even people like Xianxia would tread very carefully around him. It was only when he was speaking to Hunger, Yuer, or her that he was still as gentle as she remembered. Perhaps this was the only bit of gentleness and warmth that still remained within him. The eyes and the smile that Yun-Chi showed her were not dark or gloomy at all. In fact, they did not even contain a hint of coldness. "Let's dual cultivate. Your purewood spirit aura will definitely help with my comprehension of the law of nothingness. At the same time, it will also aid the growth of your spiritual strength. In fact, it might help the sky poison pearl recover its poison power quicker." He-Ling looked down, flustered. She did not dare to meet his gaze. "It will speed up the process of our revenge. However, you will never become a tool to me. You will always be a part of my life. This was set the moment our lives were connected, and it will never change, not until the day we die." Gentle ripples spread throughout her heart without ceasing, and it soundlessly carried away all of her worries, fears, and misgivings. She raised her delicate head and looked straight into Yun-Chi's eyes, her beautiful eyes shining brightly, as if all the stars in the universe were gathered in them. She really liked it when Yun-Chi said these sort of words to her. It was a joy that could not be described with words. Yun-Chi suddenly stretched out an arm, and sacred white light seemed to intermingle with viridian light as it shone from his fingers. After that, the light swiftly started to spread out and fill the surrounding area, causing a dense aura of life to fill the air. The royal wood spirit orb that He-Lin had given him had disappeared when he had triggered the divine miracle of life back on the blue pole star. But he still retained all of the memories contained within it, and some of its wood spirit energy. All of the vegetation in the area instantly started to sway as green leaves blossomed on the trees and covered them in the shade. The flowers were in full bloom, and it was as if they had been transported into an entirely different world, one of ephemeral fantasy, in the mere blink of an eye. He-Ling's vision grew hazy. The only things that had colored her world during the years spent in the northern divine region and the god realm of absolute beginning were gray ash, gloomy darkness, and fresh blood. So the world in front of her seemed like a distant dream. Ah! She gave a flustered cry, but her slender and delicate waist had already been embraced. After that, she fell heavily against Yun Chi's arm before he gently pushed her down amidst a field of blooming flowers. Her heart leapt in her chest wildly, and her gaze turned confused and evasive. She did not even know where to place her arms as she squirmed around, still flustered. The sounds and images that she had inadvertently witnessed now surged into her mind involuntarily, causing her body to go limp and her breathing to become rough. Are we going to start dual cultivating? She tried her best to maintain her cool, but her breathing was growing rougher and rougher, and her entire body was turning a bright shade of pink. Kaianai Yinger, the little demon empress, Feng Zuer, Chu Yuechen, Kang Yue, Su Linger, the twins Feng Hanyu and Hangsu. Those images flooded her mind, and she could not suppress them no matter how hard she tried. Even though Yun Chi hadn't lived for a very long time, he had already tasted all sorts of women. However, the wood spirit girl that lay beneath him was so lovely that it caused his heart to race. She had an ethereally beautiful face, which looked like it had been bestowed upon her by a god. Furthermore, her beauty was different from all the other women Yun Chi had been with. She was beautiful in a gentle and fragile manner, just like the first bloom of spring, like the newly formed wings of a butterfly which had just crawled out of its cocoon. "No," Yun Chi said as he shook his head gently. He had not noticed, but his voice and actions had become far gentler than before. "First, I will make my He Ling into my little Linger, someone who belongs to me and me alone." 1. Snow Song Realm, Ice Phoenix Realm, Heavenly Netherfrost Lake. "Big sister, I've come to see you." Mu Bingyun knelt by the shores of the heavenly lake as she cast a few freshly bloomed ice feather spirit flowers into it. Her icy eyes silently observed them floating into the distance. That was the flower that her big sister loved the most when she was still alive. However, she had never known the reason why her sister had suddenly grown to love them so much. "Big sister, it's only after you left that everyone understood just how important you were to the sect, to the entire Snow Song Realm. It was only after I succeeded your throne that I truly came to understand just how outstanding you were." She closed her icy eyes as her long hair dipped into the lake, stirring up melancholic ripples in the surface of the water. She softly whispered, "Sis, you are the greatest pride of my life. I brought Yun Chi here, but he was the one who took you away from us. Even so, no matter how hard I try, I just can't bring myself to hate him, because he was the person that Big Sister loved. Big Sister loved him so much, so how could I really come to hate him? On the contrary, every year, every day, I find myself pining for him. The thing I fear the most is that I'll hear the news of his death." She softly mumbled those words as if she were speaking in her sleep. "Big sister, when you were still alive, you used your life and the future of the Snow Song Realm to protect him. And you're still trying your best to protect him in the land of the dead, aren't you?" The untimely death of the beautiful Mu Xuanian had cost the Snow Song Realm its greatest pillar of strength. If not for the stern warning the Moon God Emperor had given everyone back then, the Snow Song Realm would have long since been swarmed under by star realms who were either trying to take advantage of the situation or settle old scores with them. Mu Bingyun's cultivation and fame were far weaker than Mu Xuanian's, so after she had inherited Mu Xuanian's throne and position within the sect, she had become pressured on all sides. However, the harder things got, the less weakness she could show. She had previously been as gentle and soft as a cloud, but now she had to force herself to be cold, decisive, and even merciless. The only time she could fully display her weakness was when she was alone with her sister in this place. She did not stay for long. Once the last of the ice feather spirit flowers floated out of her view, Mu Bingyun slowly got to her feet. In the blink of an eye, the mistiness in her eyes disappeared, and the only thing left was a terrifying coldness. When she returned to the Ice Phoenix sacred region, Second Elder Mu Tanjai was already waiting outside her hall. His expression was exceptionally grave, and he swiftly approached Mu Bingyun as he said, "Sect Master, something terrible has happened. The thing we've been worried about for the past few years has finally come to pass." Mu Bingyun let out a gloomy sigh, but the expression on her peerlessly beautiful face, which looked like it was carved out of ice, did not change in the slightest. "Is it the northern region or the southern region?" There were 3 powerful divine sovereign profound beasts in the Snow Song Realm. They were the overlords of all of the profound beasts in the Star Realm. They ruled over 3 regions, the eastern, southern, and northern regions respectively. When Mu Xuanian had ruled the Snow Song Realm, all 3 of these overlords had been suppressed by her power, so they obediently submitted to her. Not only did not dare to set foot out of their own profound regions, but they even dutifully governed the regions they were in charge of and kept all of the profound beasts in line. When the profound beast rampages were happening, the divine sovereign profound beast of the eastern region had charged out of its territory in a rage. But it had been incinerated by the flame god realm's Hue Poyun, who had hurried over to the Snow Song realm for the sake of Mu Feixu. But now that the Snow Song realm had lost Mu Xuanian, the two divine sovereign profound beasts who ruled the north and the south were no longer content to stay under the heels of the divine Ice Phoenix sect. The southern region, Mu Tanjai replied. Mu Bingyun gave a soft sigh of relief in her heart. If it was the divine sovereign profound beast in the southern region who had revolted, they still had the power to forcefully suppress it. Sect Emster, are we truly not going to ask the moon god realm for aid? Mu Tanjai asked. If it's just one mid-stage divine sovereign profound beast, we can still kill it with our combined might. But the profound beasts under its command number in the millions. Even if we can suppress it, we will definitely suffer heavy losses. If something happens in the northern region? No. The moment she heard the three words, Moon God Realm, Mu Bingyun's aura turned frigid and her words became cold and harsh. Even if the Ice Phoenix meets its bitter end, we will never ask anything of the Moon God Realm. If anyone dares to defy me, they will immediately be expelled from the sect. Send a sound transmission to the Great Elder. Ask him to take care of the sect. This king will personally make a trip to the south also. Suppress this news as best as you can. We don't want to stir up any panic. Mu Tanjai left to execute his orders, but his eyes were filled with worry. Even though the Moon God Realm had warned the rest of the God Realm, the world still associated the Snow Song Realm with the word sin, due to Xianxia and Mu Xuanian, who had helped Xianxia escape. What would the future hold for the Snow Song Realm? 1. The primordial profound arc a mild wind blew underneath the green foliage. Healing wore cloud robes the color of a lush forest as she quietly leaned against Xianxi's chest. Her legs, which were as white as jade china, stuck out of her dress, and her exquisite calves rested against the grass. She loved this moment of peaceful stillness that she could not quite capture with words. A sense of peace and warmth that she had never experienced before washed over her, and she quietly wished that time would freeze, that this moment would last forever. Xianxi stared into the distance as he brooded over something. At some point in time, he had rested a hand on He Ling's jade thigh, his fingers caressing that satiny and supple flesh. If this had been Kaianai Yinger, she would have slapped him into next week by now. But He Ling did not put up any resistance whatsoever. She merely nibbled on her lips as she let him wantonly explore her body. Sometimes, she would furtively turn to look at Xianxi, but now that pair of beautiful watery eyes had undergone a subtle change. She no longer looked at him meekly as her master. Instead, she now looked at him affectionately, like a lover would. Contrary to Xianxi's expectations, his comprehension of the law of nothingness had not seemed to improve even after he had cultivated with He Ling for 6 days. On the contrary, it was He Ling's aura that silently began to undergo a strange and mysterious change. Her emerald eyes had undergone the most marked change. The divine light that shone within them was now much more ethereal and profound than it had been before. He only had 2 of the 3 parts of the World-Defying Heaven manual. Did he perhaps require the last part of the World-Defying Heaven manual to complete the puzzle? Maybe his progress would be blocked until he finally obtained the last part. However, the last part of the World-Defying Heaven manual had been in the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor's possession, and now that she had left the primal chaos, it had vanished from their universe forever. This also meant that this might be the limits of his mastery of the law of nothingness. In the following months, it might come to him as naturally as breathing, but he would never be able to take the next step. The reason he had placed such a priority on cultivating with He Ling was because his trust in Kai Wao had been twisted into apprehension and killing intent that was several times stronger than that trust had been, all because of what had happened in the Burning Moon realm. It also made him painfully aware of one fact all over again. The fact that the only person he could truly trust and rely on in this world would always be himself. He had forcefully connected his energy to the origin energy of 4-star gods using the law of nothingness. He had used that to support the opening of the God Ash gate and endure the backlash of using the gate. So even though he had been successful in killing Fen Daejun, he had destroyed those 4-star god divine origin powers in the process. They were lost to the world forever. But if he advanced even a single step further in his comprehension of the law of nothingness, He might even be able to forcefully absorb divine origin powers, like the burning moon origin powers of Fen-Deijun and Fen-Deizang, for example. If he could make this a reality, his cultivation would grow by leaps and bounds. It was now clear to him that the obstacle created by not having one of the pieces of the world-defying heaven manual was a wall he could not overcome due to the missing part of the law of nothingness. However, even though he had not been able to accomplish what he set out to do initially, his plan to seize the 3 Yama ancestors and the Yama Realm had gone off without a hitch. He no longer had any reason to fear Kai Waiao now. Furthermore, his state of mind had become a lot better after he had spent the last few days entangled with He Ling. "Master, what are you thinking about?" He Ling's voice was very soft and gentle. Her life was connected to Yun Qi's, so she could very clearly sense his change and emotions. "It's about time for me to go meet that woman," Yun Qi said unhurriedly. He Ling raised her head and asked gently, "Is Master truly going to kill the Devil Queen?" When she said those words, her delicate head was still resting on his shoulders. She could not bear to lift it up. She had clearly been by his side day and night for the last few years. But for some odd reason, she had become far more reluctant to be separated from him after the last few days. Even the slightest distance between them caused her heart to feel empty. "She needs to die." Yun Qi's voice suddenly turned cold before it immediately turned gentle once more. "It's just a pity that I found out about this too late. If I had found out a little earlier, I would have given her the gift I bestowed upon Fen-Deijun, by using that power to kill her." He Ling thought about it for a moment before speaking. What Master needs the most right now is power. The soul-stealing realm is so strong, but all of the witches and soul spirits are completely loyal to the Devil Queen. If you choose to kill the Devil Queen now, you will be making a mortal enemy of the soul-stealing realm even if you do succeed. This is something that will be very bad for your cause, whether it's in the present or the future. If you continue to be allies, they will be a very strong support for you. After she said those words, He Ling's voice grew softer as she weakly said, "Furthermore, when the Devil Queen is around, she makes me feel as if everything will be all right." "No," Yun Qi shook his head. "If it was someone else, I would continue to feign ignorance and play along until I've flattened the 3 divine regions with our combined might. Then I would call all of my debts into account. But Kai Waiao is too clever and frightening." Yun Qi's chest heaved as he said those words. "I've only been allied with her for such a short period of time, yet I've already been used and backstabbed. If I continue to cooperate with her, I'm afraid that I'll be jumping into the abyss of my own accord." The only person who could cause Yun Qi to feel such apprehension in the vast northern divine region was Kai Waiao and Kai Waiao alone. He Ling very clearly felt the killing intent radiating from Yun Qi's body. Her tender lips quivered as she hesitated for a good long while before finally speaking. Could everything just be a coincidence? Could it be that the Devil Queen had no intention of harming Master in the first place? Everything could be a coincidence except for one thing, and that is the appearance of the Soul Sky warship, Yun Qi replied. But, He Ling said hesitantly, I just can't shake this feeling that she wouldn't harm Master. On the contrary. He Ling did not continue. She knew that this was merely a baseless and inexplicable feeling of hers. That is her most terrifying trait. She causes people to unconsciously put their trust in her. Yun Qi's eyes narrowed. Or perhaps I should say, as expected of a devil emperor's soul. Yun Qi stood up and stared into the distance. He could sense the change in Kaianai Yinger's aura, and his eyes started to grow cold. Let me see if she's truly dared to come, or if it's just another feint. Yun Qi immediately sensed Kai Waiao's aura the moment he returned to the Yama Imperial District. She had arrived, and she was waiting for him in the Imperial Hall. He could sense no other aura from the soul-stealing realm besides hers. Not a single one of her witches, soul spirits, or soul attendants was attending to her. She had come alone. Yun Qi froze in midair, his brows knitting together tightly. Once again, Kai Waiao had done something that was completely out of his expectations. He had ordered Yan Xianxia to seal off the Yama Realm, but that had only been a feint to distract Kai Waiao. He was not so naive as to think that Kai Waiao would not find out how he had pressed the vast Yama Realm into submission. Besides, her understanding of the eternal calamity of darkness far exceeded Yan Xianxia's. The fact that he had forced the Yama Realm into submission by summoning the power of the Bone Sea of eternal darkness should not be something unknown to Kai Waiao. In fact, there was no reason she should not be aware of this. If she dared to enter the Yama Imperial District, Yun Qi could easily force her into a dead end with the power of the bone sea of eternal darkness. Then, why did she still dare to come to this place? He could not bring himself to believe that someone as wise and cunning as Kai Waiao would fail to sense his desire to kill her. After pondering that question for a long time, Yun Qi descended from the skies and landed in front of the imperial hall. "I welcome my lord and my two venerable ancestors." Xianxia swiftly arrived to greet them. 5 Yama devils, one of whom was Yan Wu, trailed behind him. It was clear that they were on full alert now that the Devil Queen had come to pay them a visit. "Ahem." Yun Qi's eyes swept over them. "You actually left our guest alone?" Xianxia replied. "The Devil Queen said that she only wants to see my lord. Since it might have something to do with my lord's personal business, I did not dare to make any decisions on your behalf." "Did you confirm that she came by herself?" Yun Qi asked. "Yes," Yan Wu replied. "I went to investigate this matter personally, and I found that the Devil Queen did indeed come by herself. I did not detect the aura of any of her witches in a 5,000-kilometer radius." "HMPH? How interesting," Yun Qi said as he started moving again. He walked past the Yama Emperor and the Yama Devils as he stepped into the Imperial Hall. Yun Qi immediately recognized Kai Waiao's figure in that dim light. She was still shrouded by that thin and wispy black mist. She still radiated that invisible and bewitching devilish might that made people feel like they wanted to kneel before her in submission. "To think that the Devil Queen would honor us with a visit. Please forgive my tardiness in coming out to greet you." Yun Qi said those words in a bright voice as he strode towards her. Yan 1 and Yan 3, who trailed behind him, released their auras, instantly dispelling the invisible energy field that radiated from Kai Waiao's body. Kai Waiao turned around, and those bewitching eyes concealed by black mist met Yun Qi's own. She had not seen him for many days, and the gloomy coldness in his eyes still remained. However, there was a penetrating sharpness in his gaze, like a naked blade thirsting for blood, because he no longer needed to pretend. The casual greeting that he just gave had blatantly announced his status as the true ruler of the Yama Realm. Her lips parted gently as a devilish voice that could melt one's bones rang in the air. "Why call me the Devil Queen when you can call me by my name?" Her tone slowly changed as she started to sound sad and wronged. "It has only been 20-odd days since we last met, but you've suddenly become such a stranger." "Heh." Yun Qi gave a cold laugh before his eyebrows sank deeply. "Kai Waiao, cut it out with that seduction nonsense. Now that it has come to this, are you really so naive as to think that I'll pretend to be unaware of what you've done?" The name, Kai Waiao, those two same words, were now being pronounced in a more cold and bleak manner than Yun Qi had ever said them before. Kai Waiao gave a regretful sigh as she said, "The matter with Kaining was indeed my fault. I will definitely make up for it." If she had not suggested that Kaianai Yinger duel with Fen Daejun, things would not have unfolded the way they had, and this had become a deep and heavy knot in her heart. Yun Qi's eyes narrowed sharply and killing intent began to leak from that cold smile of his. "Previously you claimed total ignorance, but now you happily admit your fault. You are indeed the famed and renowned Devil Queen of the North. You really do know how to judge the situation. My mistake was that I should not have gotten Kaining to duel with Fen Daejun," Kai Waiao said in a gentle voice. "I really did not know that she was pregnant at the time." Yun Qi's cold and sinister smile curved into a mocking grin. "So you're saying you summoned the Soul Sky warship in such a timely manner because you were concerned about my safety? He, Kai Waiao, take a guess. Do you really think I should believe such a ridiculous joke?" Kai Waiao remained silent. "I have no choice but to admit that both your cunning and viciousness are frightening. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you are unrivaled in those aspects. After all, you went from being a mortal woman to the Devil Queen, whose name makes even the God Emperors tremble. You are also the only one under heaven to have accomplished this. But it's a pity that you were still too anxious." Yun Qi's voice turned low and deep. "Or perhaps that little bit of sacrifice was worth it if it could net you the vast burning moon realm. Perhaps you thought that I'd happily accept the truth after I found out once I considered the complete capitulation of the burning moon realm. However, understanding a person is a very hard thing to do, just like how I wasn't able to see through your actions. Though I am an evil spirit who will stop at nothing to achieve my vengeance, there are still some lines that I will never cross. Some things which will forever be taboo to me." Kai Waiao still did not speak. Instead, she stared unblinkingly at Yun Qi from beneath the black mist that wreathed her body. I was wondering about something even before I stepped in here. Yun Qi's eyes were also fixed on Kai Wao as he monitored her to catch any subtle actions. He did not detect anything. And that is how exactly you plan to leave this place alive today. Kai Wao. If it was just that joke you made previously, then that's just too disappointing. It's simply far too lacking when compared to the frightening and mighty title, Devil Queen. Yun Qi's grin grew more and more sinister as his eyes turned gloomy and dark. He slowly raised a hand, his palm pointed straight at Kai Wao. You, the Devil Queen, can't be unaware of the reason why the Yama Realm had no choice but to capitulate to me. If I summoned the power of the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness, you can forget about leaving this place alive, even if there were 9 more of you. But since you dared to come, and come alone at that, you must have something to rely on. That does spark my curiosity. Yun Qi's eyes had already narrowed to 2 long slits. The auras of the 2 Yama ancestors behind him had also locked onto Kai Wao. Come, let me see just how you're going to get out of this situation today. I sincerely hope that you don't disappoint me. Kai Wao's beautiful eyes opened beneath the black mist. She gently turned around as she spoke in a calm voice. Fate is something that is incredibly mysterious. It can never be predicted and it is forever unknowable. At times, an impulsive decision can create many huge waves, many wonderful results. What? Yun Qi chuckled coldly before speaking in a mocking voice. Could this be your opening play when you attempt to seduce someone and steal their soul? Yun Qi, she said in a soft and breathy voice as if she was murmuring. Do you still remember the person who gave you the amorous frost dew in the Snow Song Realm's 36th Ice Phoenix Palace 10 years ago? That senior sister. Kai Wao's words seemed to come from an incredibly distant and ephemeral dreamland. As he stared down Kai Wao, who had chosen to step into the Yama Imperial District herself, Yun Qi was absolutely confident that he could defeat her with the power of the Bone Sea of Eternal Darkness. But he didn't dare to relax in the slightest. Her cunning and intelligence were simply far too terrifying, and she possessed the soul of a devil emperor, something unique to her alone. However, those soft and gentle words of hers still managed to penetrate his layers of defenses as they touched something in the depths of his soul. Those words had clearly been as faint and gentle as wisps of cloud, but they had instantly caused huge tidal waves in his heart. 10 years ago, the senior sister who had delivered the amorous frost dew to the 36th Ice Phoenix Palace. That was the very first time in his life he had laid his eyes upon Mu Xuanian. The very first time he had seen this woman who would change his life time and again, who would be carved into his very soul. Every image of her, every word that she had said had been perfectly carved into the depths of his heart and soul. It was as if all of those things had been carved into the purest and most perfect crystal in the world. A crystal that was dripping blood. How could he forget? He could never ever forget. He would not forget even if he died. And he would never allow his memories of her to be profaned in any way. His eyes trembled violently before they regained their clarity in the very next instant. Yun Qi's eyebrows sank precipitously and his eyes turned into cold swords. So you really can steal another person's memories? When he had first met Mu Xuanian all those years ago, it was the first time in his life that he had met a woman who would cause all of the blood in his body to rush to his head at first glance. He had practically made a stuttering fool of himself when he had spoken to her. He hadn't made such a fool of himself even when he had seen Shen Zai's true appearance later. At that time, he had very nearly blurted out the 4 words, big-breasted senior sister, in a daze. In the end, he had even tried to be a smart Alec and guessed that she was Mu Feixu. Only Mu Bingyun and Mu Zairalan had heard about what had happened that day, and even they did not know all the details. There was no way that anyone else knew a thing about it. Kai Wao softly said, I can steal the souls of any person in this universe. Only you possess the soul of the primordial azure dragon and the heaven-smiting devil emperor's eternal calamity of darkness. Given the current level of your soul, there is no one in existence who can forcefully steal your soul or memories. You should understand this point better than anyone else. You should be more sure of it than anybody else. Yun Qi's eyes violently trembled, but he desperately clung to rationality in the depths of his heart. In fact, he had even stopped himself from asking her any questions. However, he had not felt any ripples of soul energy come from Kai Wao. Neither had he felt his soul being invaded. Even then, he knew that this was definitely due to Kai Wao's mysterious ability to steal souls. It definitely had to be. You must be very curious as to why I would know about the events of that day. Kai Waiao continued to lean toward Yun Qi, her voice as soft and fluffy as cotton. Because the person who entered the 36th Ice Phoenix Palace to pass you the amorous frost dew was me. He. His vision blurred yet again, but after that Yun Qi started laughing coldly. Kai Waiao, you really are terrible at telling jokes. Furthermore, his gaze and his voice were growing darker and colder by the second. He slowly curled his fingers as a cluster of dense and crackling black light appeared above his palm. There are some things that I won't allow anyone to profane, no matter who they are. Good job, you've succeeded marvelously in enraging me yet again. BZZ? He raised an arm and black light blazed from his hand. Yan 1 and Yan 3 also raised their old heads as they immediately unleashed their boundless dark power and locked onto Kai Waiao. Yan Xianxia and the gathered Yama devils who were keeping guard outside the hall sensed the change in energy. The Yama devil power that had been coiled up in their bodies like a bent spring was begging for release. Once Yun Qi gave the word, they would attack with all of their might. As long as they eliminated the Devil Queen, the soul-stealing realm would be like a headless snake, and swallowing them up would only be a matter of time. One strong aura after the other locked onto Kai Waiao's body. At this moment, the ancient yin energy of the bone sea of eternal darkness started to violently churn like colossal waves in an actual ocean. With a single thought, Yun Qi could send it pummeling toward Kai Waiao. The mighty Devil Queen of the North had truly been checkmated for perhaps the first time in her life. It was also the first time she had been so alone while she fought her enemies. But not a single trace of panic or fear radiated from her body. Her aura still remained as calm and serene as ever. She slowly turned around to look toward Yun Qi, and in the instant she turned around, the air around her underwent a sudden but subtle change. Her aura did not get any stronger. On the contrary, it started to grow weaker, and it did not contain any sharpness or attacking intent. Instead, it released a cold and rather stifling dignity that would not pressure a divine master in any way. Even so, it was in that exact instant that Yun Qi, whose lips were hooked into a cold smile and whose eyes blazed with killing intent, suddenly shuddered. His cold and bleak eyes widened soundlessly. Chair, Kai Waiao gave a sad sigh. Is this how you speak to your master now? Buzz. It was as if all the stars in the sky had exploded in his eyes. His rage, killing intent, and malice, even his rationality had all been destroyed in a single instant. The only thing he felt right now was the violent shuddering of his own soul. His world had started to spin. Yan 1 and Yan 3 flew into a great rage. Yan 3 could not suppress his anger as he launched his body forward. A ghost claw that was several thousand meters long appeared on his right arm, and it was aimed straight for Kai Waiao's throat. How audacious of you, Devil Queen! How dare you speak to Master in such a manner? Get back! A furious roar exploded in Yan 3's ears. He had clearly only yelled 2 words, yet his voice was clearly trembling. Yan 3 tried to withdraw his power in a flustered panic while he was still in flight. Due to his chaotically fluctuating energy, it looked like someone had smacked him out of the air with a rod, and he tumbled to the ground in an extremely sorry state. He immediately flipped to his feet, as he dragged himself back to his original position behind Yun Qi in a crestfallen manner, unable to hide the confusion and fear on his ancient face. Get out, Yun Qi said in a low voice. All of you get lost now. Yes. Yan 1 and Yan 3 both noticed Yun Qi's sudden bizarre state, but they did not dare ask him a single question about it. Instead, they hurriedly withdrew. The vast and spacious Imperial Hall was soon occupied by only 2 people, Yun Qi and Kai Waiao. The black light in Yun Qi's hand had fizzled out at some point in time. He stared fixedly at Kai Waiao, who was still wreathed in black smoke. He gritted his teeth fiercely as he strove to maintain his composure with all his might. However, his face was still trembling and his pupils were still contracting. He could not stop his body from reacting this way, no matter how hard he tried. Who are you? He could hear how mightily his voice was trembling right now. Who exactly are you? Her aura, the way she was standing, her voice, her tone, her eyes. That sigh, the way she had said, chair. All of his senses and his entire soul were screaming at him with incredible intensity, telling him that the figure which only appeared in his most wonderful or melancholic dreams was standing before him once more. At times, believing is indeed a very hard thing to do, Kai Waiao said slowly. As those words entered Yun Qi's ears, they seemed to come from a fantastical dreamscape. Then let your master help you see a little clearer. She suddenly laughed in a very soft, gentle, and bewitching manner. Even under that black mist, he could still see Kai Waiao's devilish body shift forward. You were unwilling to do it with Faksu, could it be that? You want Master to be your dual cultivation partner? BOOOM. A countless number of bright lights exploded in his brain. His body violently swayed, and he almost fell to the ground. Those incredibly provocative and titillating words, that devilish voice that could melt bone, Yunqi would never forget them. When Mu Xuanian had whispered those words to him all those years ago, he had felt as if a boundless fire was scorching his body. Despite him using the dragon god's soul to suppress those emotions, he had still very nearly pounced on the master that he had so clearly respected without a single care in the world. She had said the exact same words, in exactly the same alluring and seductive tone, with the exact same voice. In fact, even though his mind was dazed and his soul was shuddering, his body still started to smolder with the fires of desire. Yunqi bit down on the tip of his tongue violently. The intense pain and the taste of blood assaulted him, but it still could not suppress the trembling of both his body and soul. He fiercely shook his head as he said with much difficulty, "No, you're not. Who exactly are you? You." Ever since Yunqi had set foot into the northern divine region, this was the first time that he, who had killed all of his compassion and hesitation, had ever been thrown into such disarray. "I am your master," Kai Waiao said, "but I'm not Mu Xuanian." Yunqi's gaze grew focused. "Your master had two personalities," Kai Waiao said in a calm voice. It clearly did not carry any soul power, but each word pierced through Yunqi's soul. The first was the Snow Song Realm King who had sealed her emotions in ice, Mu Xuanian. Someone whose beauty was fairer than snow and whose icy might reigned over the world. "Why don't you guess who the other personality was?" Yunqi was frozen in place, and he did not make a single sound for a very long time. Mu Xuanian had two personalities. This was something Yunqi had been keenly aware of when he had first taken Mu Xuanian as his master. Normally, her gaze and body radiated a transcendent icy might which seemed like it could freeze the universe. Everyone in the Snow Song Realm and Divine Ice Phoenix sect held boundless reverence for her. Even Yunqi behaved himself in front of her, and when those icy eyes started to grow even colder, it would shut him straight up. But at times, she would become as alluring and enticing as a temptress. Every inch of that icy body, which no one would normally dare to profane, suddenly started radiating a bewitching seductiveness, which could instantly mesmerize a man and obliterate all of the rational thoughts in his mind. This was especially true when it came to her eyes and her voice. She only needed a single look or word to hook a person's soul right out of their body, and her victim would be willing to sink into that fantasy forever. Yunqi had been with so many women, but not a single one of them were as bewitching as she was. Two extremely different and completely contrasting personalities dwelled in that body. One was incredibly cold, and the other was incredibly seductive, yet they existed in the same person's body. This had previously caused him to feel a deep sense of astonishment and bewilderment. Even the Ice Phoenix divine being who dwelt at the bottom of the heavenly Netherfrost lake responded with puzzlement when he had mentioned it to her. However, Yunqi, who was very well versed in medicine, also knew that humans could form a second personality due to an overly traumatic event. Although it was quite unfathomable given Mu Xuanian's cultivation and icy soul, it was not entirely impossible according to his medical knowledge. Moreover, he could not find any other reason for it. Later on, Yunqi gradually began to discover that Mu Xuanian's incredibly bewitching personality would only appear in front of him and Mu Bingyun. It had never once appeared in front of the Ice Phoenix sect members or outsiders. In the end, all of these things had become a distant dream that was lost to him forever. But right now, right before his very eyes, he saw that hazy, seductive figure once more. He heard that voice that he thought had disappeared from his life forever. And he realized a truth that threw his soul into complete disarray. "Do you know why she, the Snow Song Realm King, would deign to visit the Ice Phoenix palaces and personally deliver the amorous frost dew to you all those years ago? That was because Mu Xuanian did so under my will, not her own. Do you know why she managed to find out about your heretic god legacy so easily? Do you really think it's just as she said all those years ago, that you had been exposed by the star god's broken shadow you had performed? No, it was because my Nirvana devil soul told me about the heretic god aura radiating from your body the very first moment you stepped into the Divine Ice Phoenix sect. And the reason I personally delivered that amorous frost due to you was to confirm the fact." Yunqi's face had gone slack, and it was as if he had lost his soul. After we had taken you in as our personal disciple, we instructed Mu Feixu and any Ice Phoenix disciple whose talent and appearance were exceptional to be your dual cultivation partner. Given Mu Xunian's personality, how could she have come up with such a licentious idea? The one who suggested that method was also me, Yunqi. The master that you knew, you interacted with, you loved had two personalities. She was always two different people. Half of it was Mu Xunian and half of it was me. Both she and I guided your growth, witnessed your transformation. We indulged you in everything, protected you from everything. We also, at some point in time, allowed your figure to be carved into our very souls. Explosions were still echoing in Yunqi's mind, and his world alternated between pure white and a chaotic frenzy of colors. He kept opening his mouth over and over again, but he could not make any sounds, no matter how hard he tried. Kai Waiao slowly closed her eyes, her voice turning as light and airy as the wispy clouds in the heavens above. Do you still think that I would backstab you, that I would hurt you? Yunqi's brain had never been thrown into such confused chaos before. Master had two personalities, but they didn't only belong to Mu Xunian alone. Rather, each personality had belonged to a different person. Kai Waiao, the Devil Queen of the North, had been Master's other personality. How could such a thing happen? How could such a thing? What an absurd fantasy, what a wild tale. Even so, he actually did not doubt it at all. Whether it was her cottony words or her bewitching attitude which tugged at his very soul, all of it matched that memory, that figure, which was carved into the deepest parts of his soul. This had clearly and utterly moved his soul, so there was no way it could be faked or imitated. Moreover, no one else besides him and his master knew about this. This was a secret they wouldn't let anyone know. But the woman in front of him was clearly the Devil Queen of the North. How could she be the one who had taken him as her disciple in the Snow Song realm? The one who had hunted him down after he had run away after committing a mistake? The one who had abandoned her entire sect to help him with his cultivation before the profound God convention? The one who had protected him from any and all bullying? The one who was clearly cold and merciless most of the time, but had always indulged him every time he made a mistake? The master who threw away the Snow Song realm and even her own life just to protect? Wait a second, he suddenly felt as if a dark light had violently pierced into his soul. His body went cold as his head jerked up to look at Kai Waiao. He desperately suppressed the chaos in his heart as he said in a low voice, "You hijacked her soul?" Kai Waiao shook her head gently. "I did think of doing that in the past. But for some odd reason, I gave up on that option in the end, and I merely chose to attach myself to her soul." Yunqi's trembling eyes gradually grew focused as he spoke in a low voice. "As expected. Just as expected, no, that's not right. When did you infiltrate the Snow Song realm? What exactly did you do to her?" Yunqi's reaction was completely within Kai Waiao's expectations. She let out a long and languid sigh as she replied slowly, "I will tell you everything. I will also reveal all of myself to you." Yunqi. Black mist roiled as Kai Waiao slowly walked toward Yunqi. She began speaking in that soft, devilish voice of hers again. "Yun Kaining should have told you that I previously lured Kaianai Fanchen and Zhou Zuzi to the borders of the Northern Divine Region 10 millennia ago and engaged in a fierce battle with them. To the God Emperors of the Eastern Divine Region, the Yama Emperor and the Burning Moon God Emperor, the reason I tested my strength against the two strongest God Emperors of the Eastern Divine Region was to show off my ambition after my coronation as Emperor. But in reality, and this is something that only I know, I had a very special goal to accomplish during that battle. I had planned to lure them into the Northern Divine Region and borrow the darkness energy within this place to secretly perform a successful soul infiltration. When Kaianai Yinger had first mentioned the Devil Queen to Yunqi, she had told him about what had happened 10,000 years ago. At that time, as she faced off against the two strongest God Emperors of the Eastern Divine Region, along with the strongest Guardian and Brahma God, Kai Waiao had been soundly defeated, and she had fled back into the Northern Divine Region. Kaianai Fanchen, Kaianai Wubei, Zhou Zuzi, and Honorable Tai Yu had ventured into the Northern Divine Region as they wanted to take advantage of Kai Waiao's defeat to bury her forever. But they had been lured in and assaulted by the devilish energy Kai Waiao had gathered from thousands of kilometers around them. The dark energy had gnawed at their minds and souls, leaving behind a dark shadow in the hearts of the two strongest God Emperors of the East, a shadow that refused to fade even after 10,000 years had passed. Just like Kai Waiao had said, Kayana Yinger had told him that Kai Waya was clearly testing the Eastern Divine Region's strength during that battle. At the same time, she had exposed her enormous ambition. The ambition to break out of the Northern Divine Region was also precisely the reason why Kayana Yinger had tried her best to get Yun Qi to ally himself with the Devil Queen. But right now, Kai Waya was telling him something else altogether. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor, a Brahma God, and a Guardian. They were the most important existences in the Eastern Divine Region, so they definitely had access to the most important power and secrets of the Eastern Divine Region, and even the other two Divine Regions. If I could use my Devil Emperor Divine Soul to secretly attach my soul to one of these people, I could observe the true state of the three Divine Regions with my own two eyes, and also discover many other important secrets. But alas, I had underestimated the strength of the Brahma Monarch God Realm and the Eternal Heaven God Realm. Though I managed to lure them into the borders of the Northern Divine Region, I still couldn't find the right opportunity. I tried to force it a few times, but all my attempts failed. I had no choice but to settle for the next best thing and grab someone who had entered the battle by accident. It was a woman who was holding an ice sword in her hand. Icy cold frost energy radiated from her body, and her eyes were so cold that it looked like they could freeze one's soul. She had just entered the Divine Master Realm, yet she had clearly underestimated the scope of this battle and her chosen opponent. She who had forced her way into this battle was easily subdued by me. After that, I took her to the Northern Divine Region with me. Yun Qi's brows violently twitched. I read her memories and discovered her name and background. She was Mu Xianxia, the new realm king of the Snow Song Realm. Yun Qi's eyes trembled once more, but he forced himself to remain silent as he focused attentively on every word that rang in his ears. The Snow Song Realm was the closest star realm in the Eastern Divine Region to the Northern Divine Region, so they would constantly encounter dark, profound practitioners who had escaped the Northern Divine Region in despair. These are the people that the Eastern Divine Region call devils. As the leader of the Snow Song Realm, many people from the bloodline of their realm king died at the hands of Northern Divine Region profound practitioners. This includes their ancestor and many of her close relatives. As a result, she also harbored a deep hatred towards the Northern Divine Region. Yun Qi slowly tightened both his hands into fists. Mu Xianxia had hated devils with a passion. This was something Yun Qi was well aware of. Her and Mu Bingyun's father had been killed by a devil. They were to eliminate all devils they met. This was the most important rule and creed within the Divine Ice Phoenix sect. Yet for him, a person who possessed darkness, profound energy, a devil that everyone had wanted to kill, she had. She had sensed this vicious battle because it had taken place too near the Snow Song Realm. Once she noticed what was happening, she, someone who hated devils with all of her heart, did not hesitate to join the battle, and her sword constantly sought my life. After I captured her successfully, I originally wanted to steal her soul and transform her into my puppet. Given her status, even though she would not have any contact with the true core of the three divine regions, she was still the realm king of a middle star realm. She also had the cultivation of a divine master, so she would make a most excellent spy and pawn. However, just when I was about to steal her soul away, I discovered an extremely high-level divine soul hidden in the depths of her own. That divine soul wasn't something that had just been simply merged together with Mu Xianxia's original soul. Rather, it had connected another will to her as well. If I did not possess the soul of a devil emperor, I wouldn't have detected the existence of this will either. Yun Qi knew that it was the Ice Phoenix Divine Being's divine soul that she was talking about. So the Ice Phoenix Divine Being had already attached her will to her divine soul when she bestowed her powers to Mu Xianxia 10,000 years ago. This would allow her to survey the outside world through Mu Xianxia's eyes. But later on, she had also subtly interfered with Mu Xianxia's will for his sake. However, the Ice Phoenix Divine Being was unaware that the divine soul she had imparted to Mu Xianxia would save her life when she had been captured by Kai Waya. At that time, this independent will within the divine soul was still slumbering. If I forcefully seized her soul, the process would definitely rouse the slumbering will within it, and it might very well trigger a counterattack that I would not be able to account for. Thus, I chose to attach my soul to hers in the end. I attached 10% of my Devil Emperor soul to Mu Xianxia's soul. Yun Qi's body swayed slightly. The Ice Phoenix divine being had never mentioned the existence of the Devil Emperor's soul to Yun-Chi. She had even voiced her doubts when Yun-Chi had asked her about Mu Xunian's split personality. She had not been pretending back then. She had truly been unaware of Kai Wao's existence within Mu Xunian for the last 10 millennia. Because the Nirvana Devil soul that Kai Wao possessed was the only Devil Emperor soul in this universe. It existed on a much higher plane of power than the Ice Phoenix divine being. Kai Wao had known about the existence of the Ice Phoenix divine soul, but the Ice Phoenix divine being had never been aware of Kai Wao's existence. As for Mu Xunian, she did not know that either of these entities existed within her body. When he had found out that the Ice Phoenix divine being had interfered with Mu Xunian, he felt an uncontrollable wrath toward the Ice Phoenix divine being, an entity that he had always greatly respected, because her actions had been far too cruel towards Mu Xunian. But he had never imagined that her will had not belonged to her alone since that incident 10 millennia ago. Kai Wao did not need to continue recounting the past. Yun-Chi could already imagine what had happened next. She only needed to release Mu Xunian in a very natural manner. After that, Mu Xunian would return to the Snow Song Realm once she woke up, but she would be completely unaware of the fact that a passenger was riding shotgun in her soul. An incredibly terrifying Devil Emperor soul that she had no way of ever detecting. This also meant that the master he had known from that day onward, from the very beginning, had not purely been Snow Song Realm King Mu Xunian. The person he had come to know, respect, and love. The person who had walked into the deepest parts of his heart and soul. The person who had disappeared from his life forever. That person had not been Mu Xunian, it had been the combined personalities of Mu Xunian and Kai Wao. Two personalities from two different people. But answer one question. Yun-Chi finally managed to speak after much difficulty. Just how much did you interfere with her mind? Very little, Kai Wao replied. Just as shallow as you remember it to be. Even if it's a Devil Emperor's soul, attaching one souls to another person is ultimately exactly what it sounds like. I was unable to independently control her body, nor was I able to change her decisions. The only advantage I had was that I never had to worry about being discovered by her. Yun-Chi. I could see everything that she saw, hear everything that she heard, feel everything that she felt, and even listen in on her thoughts. She viewed my existence as a second personality that had formed in her mind. She rejected me at first, but she eventually learned to accept me, and in the end, she even started to enjoy having me around, and she would even pass the reins over to me when she felt like it. So she could enjoy that sort of uninhibited and unbridled release. However, I had merely attached myself to her soul at the end of the day. When it did not compromise her principles, she would listen to the decisions that I, her other personality, made. But when she made up her mind, no matter how hard I tried to interfere as her second personality, I wasn't truly able to obstruct her from doing what she wanted. Even though your master was not purely Mu Xunian, she was still the master of her own mind and body. In the end, her will and her personality were dominant. Kai Wao closed her eyes, and her cottony voice grew even softer. During those 10 millennia, I saw many things through Mu Xunian's eyes. It forced me to come to terms with something. If it was based on my power alone, changing the fate of the northern divine region would be nothing more than a foolish pipe dream. But when I was just about to remove the attached part of my devil's soul from her own, you appeared. The heretic god aura that rolled off you caught my attention the very first moment you stepped into the divine Ice Phoenix sect. And so I gave her a few gentle nudges and I met you. I took you as her disciple. I became very curious about the heretic god divine power and the dragon god divine soul that you possessed. So my interest in you grew deeper and deeper. I started falling into a dangerous abyss before I even knew it. Yun-Chi. During that time, I sensed the interference that came from the Ice Phoenix divine being, and it was a command to always treat you well. She didn't sense it, and I did not stop it. In fact, I was powerless to stop it. However, the interference that came from the Ice Phoenix divine being was actually not necessary in the first place. This was especially true after your shared experience in the ancient god-burying inferno prison. Her heart and mental state underwent a colossal change. When she had been unable to track you down after you had run away, that was the most worried and confused she had been for the last 10 millennia. I myself am deeply aware of why she became so confused. Her bewitching eyes, which had been closed, gently opened, and they glimmered like crystals which had been infused with starlight. When she recounted Mu-Xunian's past with Yun-Chi, every time she said the word she was actually also saying the word I. At that time, she had been thoroughly amused by the fact that Mu-Xunian, the Snow Song Realm king who cultivated the Ice Phoenix God investiture canon which sealed away all emotion, would actually start to fall deeply and irrevocably in love with this young and profligate troublemaker, someone who was even her direct disciple. But attaching one's soul to another person was in reality a secret merger of two souls, and even the feelings of the host would be shared to the soul attached to it. So when she was laughing at Mu-Xunian, she was completely unaware that while her own thoughts could influence Mu-Xunian, Mu-Xunian's thoughts could also influence her own. Everything that Mu-Xunian had experienced with Yun-Chi also became something that she herself had experienced with him. As Mu-Xunian quietly fell in love with Yun-Chi, she was also experiencing the same thing. It did not matter that her true body and original soul were in the distant northern divine region. This was especially true for their shared experiences in the ancient god-burying inferno prison and the primordial profound arc. When Yun-Chi had sullied Mu-Xunian's body, Mu-Xunian's consciousness had been muddled, and even though Kai Waiao had attached her soul to Mu-Xunian's soul, she was not able to independently control her body so that she could rouse herself or resist Yun-Chi. However, her devil soul had remained completely awake during the entire process. At that time, Mu-Xunian's body had been sullied while she was unconscious, but Kai Waiao's soul had been sullied while she had been conscious of every single detail. It was no wonder Kai Waiao could tell him about his heretic god profound veins the very first day we met. Even the explanation she had given him after that had been incredibly strange and mysterious. It was no wonder she almost seemed to be able to read his mind. It was no wonder she understood him so well that it shocked him each and every time, making him think that her eyes could see through other people's souls time and again. As it turned out, she had already appeared in his life 10 years ago. She had always been observing him and teaching him from the years he had spent in the Snow Song Realm, up until the day his heart and soul were broken at the Blue Pole Star. You possessed far too many secrets, Kai Waiao continued. When a woman wants to dig up a man's secrets, she normally ends up sinking into an abyss before she can even notice. Even I was no exception. This was especially true for her me. After the events that occurred within the ancient god-burying inferno prison, even I had completely given in to despair, yet you used your strength, wits, and even your own life to rescue her me. You had not only stolen her body, you had also stolen her heart, for a woman who had sealed her emotions in ice for the last 10 millennia. For a woman who could not fall in love, the moment she did fall in love, it would be something that would last beyond even death. Yun-Chi. It was also after that moment that she would regularly use my personality to face you. In fact, she had become far more willing than ever before to use that personality. Perhaps she subconsciously thought that my personality would be able to draw you to her more, would be able to make you fall head over heels for her. However, Kai Waiao briefly paused as her voice became tinged with a deep melancholy. Right before she met her untimely end outside the Blue Pole Star, as her soul was slipping into death, she finally learned of my existence in the few instants it took for my devil soul to leave her body. Yun-Chi's vision spun violently as the world grew blurry. The sounds and the images which pierced his heart and cut his soul clearly played out in front of him yet again. You are not the only one who gets to act selfishly. Chair, live, on. His body started to violently shake as a wave of sorrow that was far too intense for him to handle overtook him. He lifted his head to look at Kai Waiao, who was still veiled in black mist. His gaze was frightening and his voice was low and deep. What the hell did you take her for? The Ice Phoenix divine being had inserted her divine soul into Mu-Xunian so that she could see the outside world through Mu-Xunian's eyes. It was only when Yun-Chi had appeared that she interfered with Mu-Xunian's will for the first and last time. That had already stirred up Yun-Chi's wrath. Even if getting rid of that suggestion meant that Mu-Xunian's doting love for him might turn into hatred, he still insisted that the Ice Phoenix divine being do it, because it was much too cruel and unfair for Mu-Xunian, for anyone at all in fact, to have their own mind and will tampered with. As for Kai Waiao, although she had only attached her soul to Mu-Xunian and could not forcefully interfere with her, she had subtly influenced Mu-Xunian for nearly her entire life. This also meant that Mu-Xunian had been used and manipulated by other people for nearly her entire life, and she never had a clue about it. What the hell do all of you take her for? Xianxia muttered under his breath, his fingers curling into tight fists as they trembled. Why did each and every one of you have to treat her this way? Pain, self-recrimination, and rage that were too intense for him to bear chaotically surged through his heart, and Xianxia's vision swam. He instantly closed the gap between him and Kai Waiao as his arm suddenly shot out violently. His fingers pierced the black mist as they shot toward her throat. Kai Waiao did not move and allowed him to grab her violently by the throat, his fingers painfully digging into her flesh. It was also in this instant that Kai Waiao's black mist slowly started to scatter. For the first time ever, Xianxia beheld Kai Waiao's true appearance through blurry eyes. The soul-stealing realm's devil queen, Kai Waiao. She was the most beautiful woman in the northern divine region. That was something that every living creature in the northern divine region knew, and no one had ever doubted. As the black mist blew away, an alluringly beautiful face that seemed to hold all of the bewitching seductiveness in the world appeared before him. Just based on the exquisiteness of her physical features, she would already be considered a peerless beauty in the god realm. Her beauty was just a step lower than Xianxia and Qianai Yinger's beauty. However, her crescent brows and phoenix eyes effortlessly released a boundless, bewitching allure that threatened to yank a person's soul out of their body. Her exquisite lips were pink and dewy. A single small glance from her would penetrate a man's soul and topple his will, causing his body to burn up with boundless desire. As his eyes swept downward, he saw that she was wearing an unadorned black robe which wrapped around her, showing off her ample chest and every bewitching curve of her body. She quietly stood there, her breasts gently rising and falling from simply breathing, creating a sight that was so seductive and mesmerizing that Xianxia's veins almost popped open. It was also in that moment that Xianxia blurrily realized what the words devilish figure truly meant for the first time in his life. Xianxia had seen many seductive and alluring women, and he was familiar with more than a few arts of seduction. But he had never known that a woman could actually be this alluring and mesmerizing. Every inch of her body, even her snowy skin, even the jade neck that he was gripping with his hand, seemed to glow with a fantastically mesmerizing light. Xianxia's entire body was frozen in place as he dumbly stared at her. The incredibly intense pain, sorrow, and rage that he had clearly felt an instant ago had vanished into thin air. It was as if all of these emotions had been sucked into the boundless abyss of her spellbinding magnetism. "Chair," Kai Waiao softly whispered, her misty and limpid eyes staring straight into Xianxia's own. "Do you truly want to kill your master?" Master's eyes, Master's bewitching voice, the way that Master sighed, those provocative and alluring words. Xianxia's hand retracted from Kai Waiao's neck as quick as lightning. "No, no," Xianxia stumbled backwards. In that instant, he could scarcely believe that he had done such an outrageous thing to his master. But as he retreated in panic and nearly lost his balance, a calming fragrance gently tickled his nose. His muddled senses barely registered her movement as Kai Waiao gently enfolded him in an embrace, burying his face in what felt like a warm pile of cotton. "Chair," an ephemeral voice softly entered his ears. "She was your master, but I am also your master. We watched your growth together, we watched you go farther and farther, we quietly watched over you all this while. We shared your joys, lamentations, hurts, and tears." Xianxia's body was shaking, and the black wall that had been erected in his heart was soundlessly crumbling in this moment. When she used her life to protect you, that was the one choice she least regretted in her entire life. Thus, I inherited her desire to protect you. I won't allow anyone to harm you or let you down. Anyone who bullies you, hurts you, or betrays you, I will pay them back 10,000-fold, no matter who they are. Everything you desire, all of the best things in this universe, I will give them all to you to make it up to you, even if I have to take them by force. Is that okay? Xianxia's body was shaking and his teeth clattered together noisily. He tried to clench his teeth together hard, but he couldn't summon up any strength to resist. "Maz, Tur," that soft cry had come from the depths of his soul. The black ramparts in his heart had come crumbling down in front of the master he had once thought was lost to him forever. For the first time since that dark day, his deeply hidden vulnerabilities finally saw the light of day. "Master, Master, Master!" He cried out that word again and again, and the tears which he had thought had long ago dried up were gushing out of his eyes once more, soaking the front of Kai Waiao's robes. This was an illusion which he'd be willing to wallow in forever. What's more, it wasn't entirely a dream. Kai Waiao gently closed her eyes as she enfolded the man in front of her in a tight embrace. Maybe it was because she cherished Xianxia, or perhaps it was influenced by the guilt she felt toward Mu Xuanian. But her words were not just meant to comfort Yun Qi. This was a vow she had already made before she had even found Yun Qi again. Eastern Divine Region, Snow Song Realm, Southern Region. The Azure Snow Ice Kirin was the overlord of the profound beasts in the Snow Song Realm's Southern Region, one of the two remaining giant divine sovereign beasts in the Snow Song Realm. Its power was equivalent to a human level 6 divine sovereign. Its rebellion was always one of the things that the divine Ice Phoenix sect had been most worried about. The Snow Song Realm had two divine sovereigns total, Mu Bingyun and Mu Huanji, so it was not hard for them to suppress a single Azure Snow Ice Kirin. But its status as the ruler of all of the profound beasts found in the south of the Snow Song Realm was far more terrifying than its individual strength, because it could summon a profound beast horde that stretched from horizon to horizon. If they attacked human settlements to enlarge their own territory, the humans living in the southern region would be plunged into a terrible situation. This time, Mu Bingyun had personally come to the southern region, and 9 great elders and countless disciples had followed her. She had also mobilized the strength of all of the branch sects in the south. But when this force descended upon the territory of the profound beasts, they found an incongruous scene waiting for them. The Azure Snow Ice Kirin was more than 200 meters long. Its beastly might was boundless, and it could topple a mountain with a single strike from its claw. Yet when they encountered it, they found it lying prostrate in front of the border of its territory. Not a single trace of malice or might radiated from its body. However, there was an enormous horde of profound beasts behind it, a horde which was too vast to count. Yet none of the humans could sense the slightest danger or threat from this gigantic profound beast horde. Furthermore, all of them were also lying prostrate on the ground motionless. Mu Bingyun had brought her own army of Ice Phoenix disciples and Snow Song Realm practitioners to confront this horde. But they were greeted with a scene that made her brow furrow deeply. A vicious and terrible battle had just taken place in this snowy region a day ago, but a bizarre silence had fallen upon it today. As it stood at the head of the profound beast horde, the Azure Snow Ice Kirin spied Mu Bingyun's arrival when she was still a fair distance away. Its entire body trembled, and it slammed its upper body against the ground and bowed its head toward her. It cried out, "This lowly beast greets the Snow Song Realm King?" Mu Bingyun's body froze in midair. She looked into the distance, shock and puzzlement blossoming on her snowy mien. The Ice Phoenix disciples behind her and those Snow Song profound practitioners who had just engaged in a fierce battle with these profound beasts yesterday glanced at each other, stunned shock apparent on their faces. "Sect Master, be careful. It must be a bluff," Mu Tanjai said in a low voice. Clang, Mu Bingyun drew the Snow Princess sword out of its scabbard and pointed it towards the distant Azure Snow Ice Kirin. She pronounced in a cold voice, "Azure Snow Ice Kirin, you went against the deal you had struck with the previous Realm King, and you rallied the profound beasts of the southern region to steal human land and resources. Today, this king has personally come to settle things with you once and for all." Despite being confronted with the cold glint of her sword and her icy might, the Azure Snow Ice Kirin did not get up. Its profound energy did not fluctuate at all. It pressed itself even deeper into the ground as it said in a pleading voice, "This lowly beast was wrong, this lowly beast was wrong. This lowly beast lost its mind recently, so I committed an unforgivable crime. This lowly beast already understands the error of its ways, so I beg that the Lord Realm King show me mercy. I beg that the Lord Realm King show me mercy." Just the angry bellow of the Azure Snow Ice Kirin would display a heaven-shocking beastly might. But right now, every word it said was filled with fear and trembles as it pathetically prostrated itself on the ground and pleaded with her. Its gigantic body was actually shaking as it said those words. This time, even those who had not been stunned by the scene that greeted them felt their jaws dropping open. The Snow Princess' sword stopped in midair, and Mu Bingyun found herself at a complete loss all of a sudden. What is going on?" Mu Tanjai's brow deeply creased. He released his divine sense only to discover that every single profound beast in this vast profound beast horde that stretched to the horizon was lying prostrate on the ground. Fear was practically dripping from their bodies, and they did not even dare to release the slightest bit of malice or attacking intent. When it saw the Mu Bingyun had remained silent for a long time, the Azure Snow Ice Kirin's trembling grew even mightier as it anxiously said, "This lowly beast knows its crimes are extremely wicked. This little beast vows to retreat into the southern region from today onward, and I will never take another step out of it. Neither will the profound beasts of the south dare to leave their territories. We will definitely compensate you for all the damages we have caused within 3 months. Furthermore, from today onward, our southern beast region will send 250,000 kilograms of the best ice profound crystals to the divine ice phoenix sect as tribute every year. We beg Lord Realm King for mercy. We beg Lord Realm King for mercy. As it pleaded with Mu Bingyun, the azure snow ice Kirin pounded its head into the ground. Every profound beasts behind it also began to desperately beg for mercy. The fact that Mu Bingyun had to come here personally showed how powerful the azure snow ice Kirin and its horde were. Even if Mu Bingyun could successfully suppress it and force it back into the southern region, that would already be the best-case scenario. And they would have to pay a rather heavy price to accomplish that. But before they had even started their suppression, the azure snow ice Kirin and the gigantic horde had already started to plead for mercy. They had even offered outrageously generous terms in order to obtain said mercy. Moreover, the way that they begged her and the fear that they showed were not things that could be faked. She had brought a mighty force with her, but the battle had ended before it had even begun. The azure snow ice Kirin departed into the depths of its territory with its mighty beast horde behind its back. It showed effusive gratitude when Mu Bingyun had given her nod of approval. The azure snow ice Kirin was actually so happy that it was moved to tears, and it practically broke its head open as it kowtowed repeatedly to Mu Bingyun. Once it had retreated a certain distance, the azure snow ice Kirin suddenly picked up speed as it practically scrambled to get as far away from Mu Bingyun as it could. It was as if it was afraid that she would change her mind. It no longer had a single shred of might and dignity befitting its status as a lord of the profound beasts. The only thing left in its mind was that deep terror which could cause its will to collapse again and again. A fear so terrible that it would ensure that the azure snow ice Kirin would never even think of rebelling ever again. To think that this mission actually ended with no blades crossed and no blood spilled, Mu Tanjai said happily. Just like everyone else, the pressure in his heart had completely vanished into the wind. Mu Bingyun stared into the distance and muttered to herself. Who exactly? She asked the azure snow ice Kirin to tell her who exactly pushed it into this corner. But the extreme fear on the azure snow ice Kirin's face was plain for all to see as it frantically denied there was such a person. When a divine, sovereign, profound beast displayed such fear, it was very likely that it had come into contact with the imperious might of a divine master. Furthermore, it seemed like this person had been extremely vicious toward the azure snow ice Kirin, as it was clearly frightened out of its wits. There are 2 possibilities, Mu Tanjai said. The first is the moon god realm. Mu Bingyun's icy eyes instantly grew even more glacial. She said in a cold voice, it won't be them. When the moon god emperor publicly announced that she owed a debt of gratitude to the snow song realm and warned everyone not to attack or offend us, it was merely to show that she wasn't an ungrateful person, heh. If she truly did send someone to help us with this matter, she'd already be clamoring to announce it to the entire eastern divine region. Then it has to be the flame god realm. Mu Tanjai spied Mu Bingyun's expression with a single glance as he let out a soft sigh. Everyone in the flame god realm and snow song realm had known since long ago that the flame god realm King Hu Poyun was infatuated with Mu Feixu. In reality, as long as Mu Feixu said a single word, the Flame God Realm King could easily suppress the overlord of both regions even if they revolted at the same time. However, favors were things that still had to be returned. Moreover, everyone was keenly aware of just how the Flame God Realm King hoped that these favors would be returned. As a result, neither answer was one that Mu Bingyun wanted to hear. Let's return to the sect. She barked out that command before she took to the skies and flew back in the direction she had come from. This large, profound beast revolt had been resolved far better than she could ever have hoped for, but Mu Bingyun's heart was still restless. After the profound beast army had retreated into their nests, the divine Ice Phoenix sect disciples departed as well. This region of boundless snow had fallen into silence once more. In the distant skies above, in a space where no one had bothered looking, a faint, icy blue light suddenly flashed through the sky. It was like the twinkling of a falling star, and it vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving no traces behind. Kai Waiao left, with the Yama Emperor walking ahead of her and the Yama Devils trailing behind her. They politely escorted Kai Waiao out of the Yama Imperial District and dazedly watched her fly into the distance. Inside the imperial hall, Yun-Chi was a motionless and silent statue. He closed his eyes as he quietly contemplated what had just happened. Just a little while ago, he had connected his aura to the dark yin energy of the bone sea of eternal darkness, as Yan 1 and Yan 3 had used their energy fields to restrict Kai Waiao's movement. The Yama Emperor and his Yama devils had all been lying in wait outside the hall, as he pointed a single finger toward Kai Waiao. He had arrogantly asked her how she was going to escape from this situation now. This had undoubtedly been a duel between Yun-Chi and Kai Waiao. But Kai Waiao had not only successfully turned the tables on him, he'd even been completely defeated. In fact, his heart and mind had practically collapsed in front of this master that he had suddenly regained. There really was nothing more beautiful in this world than regaining something you had once thought was lost forever. The more pain and suffering caused by its loss, the more impactful its return. Even though he had only regained a part of what he had lost, even though it had happened in a rather bizarre and unbelievable manner, Yun-Chi quietly stood in place for a very long time, and his face had regained its usual impassivity. But an even deeper feeling of blankness now engulfed his heart, even after he had managed to calm down. During those years, she had indeed been his master. This was one point that he did not suspect. But his master's body had been Muke-Shuanian's own, and his master's will had been dominated by Muke-Shuanian. As for Kai Waiao, she had a more important and complete identity, and that was as the Devil Queen of the North. "He Ling," he asked somewhat absent-mindedly, "can I truly continue to treat her as master?" I don't know." He Ling was even less equipped to answer a question that Yun-Chi himself had no answer to. Furthermore, He Ling had not been by Yun-Chi's side during the years he had spent with his master, so she had not witnessed the most important moments between them. "Do you think the words that she said were true?" Yun-Chi asked, his eyes unfocused and distant. Now there was one other emotion swirling in his heart besides that blank feeling of vacancy. It was a deep anxiety and worry that he would lose something he had just regained. "I won't allow anyone to harm you or let you down. Anyone who bullies you, hurts you, or betrays you, I will pay them back 10,000-fold, no matter who they are. Everything you desire, all of the best things in this universe, I will give them all to you to make it up to you, even if I have to take them by force." When he recalled those words which had been whispered into his ear, no one else would be able to believe that they had come from Kai Waiao's mouth. It resembled the doting love a mother had for her child. But at the same time, it also resembled the bottomless infatuation a woman had for the man she loved. And neither of these two emotions should have existed within Kai Waiao. Because she was the Devil Queen of the North whose devilish might reigned over the entire region, the emperor of the soul-stealing realm, the most terrifying woman in the universe. "I don't know." He Ling shook her head yet again. But after that, she whispered softly, "But I have this feeling that the words she told Master came straight from her heart. Furthermore, your master has always doted on Master like this, correct?" He Ling said softly. Yun-Chi. That was right. Master had always doted on him like this. When he had committed such a grave mistake the last time, he was only given a harsh rebuke when she caught him. After that, she even spent all of her time and effort on him and him alone. The other core disciples were only allowed to enter the heavenly Netherfrost Lake for a single day, but he had been allowed to bathe in it for an entire year. She had picked a fight with the Sword Sovereign because of him. She had cut off Luo Guxi's arm in a rage because of her sneak attack against him. She would even face all of the god emperors of the 3 divine regions alone for his sake. Those thoughts were entirely Muke-Shuanian's own. But as for Kai Waiao, Master's other face, could she really do what Master did? Moreover, He Ling continued gently, even though she wasn't the dominant will within your Master's body, Master mustn't ignore one thing. She experienced and felt everything that Muke-Shuanian did, so everything Master went through with Muke-Shuanian was also what she went through with Muke-Shuanian, not an iota less. If Muke-Shuanian can love Master so deeply, why can't Kai Waiao do the same thing? No, it's not the same. Yun-Chi shook his head when he heard He Ling's words, but his eyes were still fogged by doubt and confusion. She climbed her way up the ladder step by step, and went from a mortal woman to the Devil Queen of the North by her own strength. Her experiences, cunning, and her Devil Emperor soul especially are not things Muke-Shuanian can come close to. Shuanian's experience with me was her everything. As for Kai Waiao, it was only a small part of her soul. So how can she be exactly like Shuanian? Why would she truly have such deep emotions for me, someone who she only knew through a detached part of her will? Yun Qi could not completely convince himself when it came to Kai Waiao, and no one else would be able to do so either. After all, if Kai Waiao could become so easily infatuated with a man, how could she ever become the soul-stealing realm's devil queen, someone who stood above the rest of the northern region? I'm unable to answer Master's question, Healing said softly, just like how I could never understand why Master Xianxia was willing to give her body to Master. Yun Qi was stunned by those words. However, Master's words made me recall something from the past. I previously asked Master Xianxia this question, Healing said as she started recounting the past. At that time, I asked Master Xianxia this. No matter whether it is his cultivation or status, the Dragon Monarch is the strongest person in the universe. He has such an exalted position, and he is so infatuated with you. So why hasn't Master's heart ever been moved by him even a little? Could it be that love didn't exist in Master's world? Master Xianxia gave me this reply. It wasn't that there was no such thing as love in her world. On the contrary, even the most emotionless woman would never be able to fully extinguish the embers of desire when it came to a beautiful thing like love. However, women were often more willing to be subdued by men who were stronger than them. The more powerful a woman and the loftier her position, the more likely this would apply to them. If there ever came a day where a man who was worthy of her infatuation appeared in her life, she might even choose to proposition that person herself. Yun Qi was slightly stunned by those words. He was surprised that Xianxia had given such an answer. At that time, I couldn't understand the answer that Master Xianxia had given me. But Healing paused as her voice grew even softer. I think I understand now. There are many powerful people in this world, but Master is the only person who is truly qualified to be with Master Xianxia. You are the only one who can meet her standard in this universe, Healing said. It's the same thing with Yun Kaining. She used to view every man with contempt, even people who were as strong as the Southern Sea God Emperor and as infatuated as the heavenly wolf Zissou were nothing more than tools in her eyes. Yet she's changed so much after just a few short years at Master's side. No, Kai Waiao is different. She's a different breed from either of them. Yun Qi shook his head in disagreement when he heard Healing's word. Kai Waiao is not only good at using men, she is also a master at manipulating their emotions. She's experienced far too many men over her long life, and even the clear sky god emperor fell at her hands. How could someone like her fall so easily in love with someone else? How could someone like her fall so completely in love with someone else? Even though Kai Waiao had the devil emperor soul from the very beginning, she had been alone, and she had no power backing her. Thus, even as her strength grew, she used men to climb the ladder of power. When she conquered them, she also slowly gained control of their power and wealth. She used that method to slowly grow more and more powerful as she went from a middle star realm to an upper star realm to a king realm. When she finally conquered the Clear Sky God Emperor, she had used some truly shocking methods to capture the entire Clear Sky God realm. After that, she slowly transformed the Clear Sky God realm into the soul-stealing realm, a star realm that was loyal to her alone, before she ascended the throne. There was not a single woman in the history of the God realm who could compare with her. Even the most infamous woman in the God realm, the Brahma monarch goddess Xianxia Yinger, had built her reputation off the back of the Brahma monarch God realm. Healing lapsed into a long silence before she suddenly said, Master, just now, when Kai Waiao hugged you, I discovered something that was very strange. Yun Qi, Kai Waiao is a virgin. Those words threw Yun Qi for a loop. He blurted out, that's not possible. Kai Waiao had relied on her bewitching allure to scale the heights of power. She had ensnared one man after the other in order to finally become the devil queen of the north. This was something everyone in the northern divine region knew. In fact, Xianxia Yinger had been well aware of this fact even before she had taken a single step into the northern divine region. Though it is at odds with what we know, that is what I sensed. Healing's voice was very soft and gentle, but it brooked no argument. The wood spirit race had been created by the creation goddess of life, Li Xiu. They were as pure a race as you could find in this universe. They were extremely sensitive to wickedness and extremely close to all pure things. The purest thing within a woman's body was her vital yin, so He Ling would be able to sense its presence clearly if she was in close contact with a virgin woman. Yun Qi froze in place, and he did not utter a single sound for a very long time. Perhaps the real Kai Waiao isn't anything like the rumors say she is. After all, rumors are only rumors, and they are often unreliable. Furthermore, just like Master always says, truly understanding someone is a very hard thing to do. But does Master truly understand her? Yun Qi closed his eyes. He lapsed into a long silence which no one dared to disturb as the cogs in his mind spun furiously. When Yun Qi finally strode out of the imperial hall, nearly a dozen hours had flown by, but Yan Xianxia and the gathered Yama devils were still waiting for him outside. The moment they saw Yun Qi emerge from the hall, Yan 1 and Yan 3 sped over to Yun Qi's side as quick as lightning. Their only fear was that one of their descendants suddenly had a brain cramp and did something to offend Yun Qi. Yan Xianxia stepped forward and asked, "Could it be there has been a change in my lord's plan to take over the soul-stealing realm?" Yun Qi did not even bother answering that question. Instead, he asked in a cold voice, "How are the preparations for the coronation ceremony going?" Yan Xianxia said, "We've already prepared all of the invitation cards, and we can begin sending them to all the star realms starting from tomorrow. As for the ceremony proper, there's no need for that any longer." Yun Qi cut him off mid-sentence. "Change the location of the ceremony written in the invitation cards to the soul-stealing realm. We will decide on the date later." Yan Xianxiao's head jerked up and shock appeared on the faces of all the Yama devils behind him. "This," Yan Xianxia swiftly rephrased the words he was about to say before speaking. "Did something unforeseen happen? Is the Devil Queen willing to lead the soul-stealing realm under your banner after you had a word with her? And you now have her support to be the lord of the northern region?" He knew that there was no way that it happened. If Kaiwaya was so easy to deal with, the soul-stealing realm would not be the power that it was today. "Correct," Yun Qi replied. This answer utterly floored the Yama Emperor and the gathered Yama devils. It had completely exceeded their expectations and imagination. Yan Xianxia froze for 2 whole breaths before his eyebrows sank dramatically. He said, "My lord, you are not well acquainted with this woman Kaiwaya. Her dreadfulness isn't something most people can even fathom. Her cunning and the methods she uses, especially when it comes to enthralling men, can be said to be unrivaled in this universe. Her ambition is even greater than her cunning, and she definitely won't be content to serve under someone else. There's no way that she actually capitulated so easily. My lord must not become ensnared by her?" Yun Qi had already grabbed hold of the Yama Realm's Yama ancestors, legacy, and lifeline, so they had no choice but to submit. But no matter how hard Yan Xianxia thought, he simply could not find a reason for Kaiwaya to be content to support Yun Qi as her ruler. "HMPH, this isn't something you should concern yourself with," Yun Qi said as he shot a pointed glance toward Yan Xianxia. Yan Xianxia lowered his head again. He suddenly realized that other people also would not be able to understand how the Yama Realm, which had stood at the top for more than 800,000 years, had submitted to Yun Qi in the span of a day. Had the soul-stealing realm also been forced to their knees by some power they had no hope of resisting? If that was truly the case, then the man in front of him was simply far too terrifying. Once those thoughts occurred to him, Yan Xianxiao's heart was filled with dread, and his already deep apprehension and fear of Yun Qi grew even deeper. "The Burning Moon Realm has come under the Devil Queen's complete control," Yun Qi said calmly. "The soul-stealing realm has also decided to support me as the ruler of the northern region. In other words, the soul-stealing realm, Yama Realm, and Burning Moon Realm are all willing to serve under me. As for the rest of them, it won't be long now." Yun Qi's words shook the hearts of the Yama Emperor and the Yama devils, and their eyes started trembling. Everything was happening too fast. It was so fast it nearly seemed like a dream. Just a month ago, the northern divine region was still being dominated by the 3 king realms. But now that this short month had passed, the Burning Moon Realm had fallen, the Yama Realm had submitted, and the soul-stealing realm had bent the knee. The 3 vast king realms, 3 exalted existences which ruled over the rest of the northern divine region. In just a single short month, they had all bent the knee to a single person with scarcely even a single ripple. There had been no momentous struggle or long and drawn-out war. It had simply happened. How mystical, how terrifying. The way they regarded Yun Qi underwent a quiet but dramatic change. Now that they thought about it, these were unprecedented and world-shocking accomplishments. No one in the northern divine region had ever achieved or even dreamed of achieving such things. Yet it had seemed all too easy for him. He was only 30-odd years old, and he had only been in the northern divine region for a few paltry years. They felt as if tidal waves were crashing about in their hearts as their respect and fear toward Yun Qi dramatically deepened. The already faint and weak desire to rebel against him was swiftly extinguished after this realization, and not even a hint of it remained. Conquering the three king realms was equivalent to conquering the entire northern divine region. Since the three king realms had bent the knee, it was not even a matter of time for all the other star realms. The burning moon realm's fall had been accidental. His attempt to subdue the Yama realm had gone exceptionally smoothly, and the capitulation of the soul-stealing realm had been a dreamlike occurrence. Xianxia had initially set a timetable of 3 years when he had entered into an alliance with Kai Wao, so it was clear that even he himself had not expected everything to move this quickly. "We congratulate our lord. You will soon complete a great undertaking that has never been accomplished in the history of the northern divine region." Shock still reverberated in Xianxia's heart as he swiftly bowed his head. In fact, he had even started to greatly rejoice in the fact that he had chosen to bend his knee to the man in front of him. This man who seemed to transcend all of his knowledge. He even embraced his deferential and respectful behavior towards him. If he had chosen to fight to the death, he would not even have had the chance to regret his decision. HMPH, what a bunch of disappointing and ignorant brats, Yan suddenly snorted. To think that all of you actually chose to defy your venerable ancestors' choice in the beginning. How preposterous. Embarrassment appeared on Xianxia's face as he hurriedly said, "Ancestor is right. The wisdom of the three venerable ancestors shines like a torch in the darkness, so it's natural that we, your descendants, pale in comparison to you. Let the soul-stealing realm take over the preparations for the coronation ceremony." Kai Wao's devilish figure floated up in Xianxia's mind unbidden. He felt his heart stir up restlessly, and he quietly sucked in a few breaths to calm himself down. "From tomorrow onward, all of the Yama devils and Yama ghosts are to follow me into the bone sea of eternal darkness." Xianxia's heart leaped, and he fought down the urge to express his ecstatic joy as he said, "Does my lord mean to?" "Heh." Xianxia glanced at Yan Wu and said, "As long as you show me sufficient loyalty, I won't treat you unfairly. I will soon complete the dark transformation of all the Yama devils and Yama ghosts, so I hope you won't disappoint me in the future." Xianxia was over the moon, and the gathered Yama devils found it hard to contain their excitement. They had all clearly witnessed the miraculous changes in Yan Wu's body. Now that this blessing was going to finally descend upon them, they could scarcely contain their emotions. "We sincerely obey our Lord's commands," Xianxia and the Yama devils shouted as they bowed deeply. Xianxia completed the transformation of the Yama devils and the Yama ghosts in the span of a single day. After that, he remained inside the bone sea of eternal darkness and silently absorbed the primordial yin energy found in this place. Meanwhile, the steps he was going to take next were quietly forming in his head. 10 days later, he suddenly opened his eyes and departed the bone sea of eternal darkness. His body blurred, and he found himself in the Imperial Hall in the blink of an eye. Xianxia made the shrunken-down primordial profound arc appear with a single thought. A dull red light flashed from it, and a golden-haired woman with the body of a goddess appeared in front of him, her hair floating in the air. It was Xianxia, who had been inside the primordial profound arc refining the second untamed world pellet. Her appearance caused Yan 1 and Yan 3, who were right behind Xianxia, to frown as they started to secretly gather their energy. Because what accompanied Xianxia's appearance was the aura of a level 10 divine master. Besides the three of them, the only level 10 divine masters alive in the present northern divine region was the Yama Emperor, Yan Wu, the Devil Queen, and the soul-stealing realm's twin great witches. This unfamiliar 10th-level divine master had undoubtedly alarmed them. While this was happening, Xianxia's eyes also darted toward them the instant she appeared as she stared at Yan 1 and Yan 3 with knitted brows. "Level 10 divine master?" Xianxia's eyes swept over Xianxia's body. To his surprise, he had actually found her recent absence discomfiting, but his voice remained as cold and indifferent as ever. "You didn't disappoint me." Xianxia's eyes turned from Yan 1 and Yan 3 to him. Her golden eyebrows knit together slightly, but her beautiful eyes were calm. "That's right, level 10 divine master. Though I still haven't reached my previous peak yet," she raised a hand and wiggled her delicate and slender fingers. "Might just be enough to kill you." "How dare you?" Yan 3 immediately roared in rage. "You outrageous girl. You actually dare to? Get out of here," Xianxia shouted in a deep voice. "Chinese letter, oh Chinese letter." Yan 3's neck abruptly stiffened, and he instantly swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He then beat a panicked retreat together with Yan 1. "Old Gooey, has your head been kicked in by a donkey?" Yan blurted out in irritation once they had left the hall. Do you think just any person can speak to Master in such a way? I just couldn't tolerate seeing anyone disrespect our Master, Yan 3 said in an aggrieved voice. That's why I always say that you use your ass to think, you never learn from your mistakes, Yan 1 said. If a man is disrespectful to Master, you go out and trash him silly. If it's a woman, you need to ask Master first before you do anything. Do you get it? Yan 3 thought about it for a moment before a look of enlightenment finally dawned on his face. He smacked his own forehead. Ah, I see. Those two. Kayana Yinger surveyed her surroundings. The clearly abnormal aura of darkness in this place caused her brow to deeply crease. After that, she swiftly recalled something. Could this be the Yama Realm? That's right. As Yun-Chi answered Kayana Yinger's question, a soul fragment formed above the tip of his finger. He tapped a finger in between her eyes. Kayana Yinger had been concentrating on observing the area around her, so Yun-Chi's not-so-gentle tap caused her head to tilt backwards. She glared at Yun-Chi before closing her golden eyes. When she finally opened them again, an astounded look appeared in her eyes. The Yama ancestors, the Yama Realm, the Devil Crystal of Eternal Darkness, Tianguhu, the soul-stealing realm, and a grand coronation ceremony. Yun-Chi had not included what had happened with Kai Waiao in the memories that he had shown Kayana Yinger. After all, even he was still trying to process what had happened. His mind descended into a daze every time he thought about it. I only haven't been around for one short month, but you've actually accomplished so many things. Kayana Yinger's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she stared at him. I've actually never been aware that you had such impressive time management skills. Yun-Chi, what I really didn't expect was that you could torture the 3 Yama ancestors without even flinching for 6 straight days. Kayana Yinger's eyes grew slightly hooded and complex emotions sprang forth in her heart. As beings of pure darkness, having one's life and soul consumed by light is no less painful than being afflicted with the Brahma soul death-wishing mark. It looks like those people that you hate will definitely regret even being born in the future. Heh, I think so too. Yun-Chi let out a low, icy chuckle. He had only said a few words, but they contained a boundless, sinister darkness. Kayana Yinger's eyes faintly trembled. When they had first teamed up together in the northern divine region, she had practically clamored for Yun-Chi to become cold and cruel, to become someone who would do anything for the sake of revenge. But now that she heard what Yun-Chi had just said, she did not feel a sense of satisfaction at seeing his growth. Instead, she actually felt a bit uncomfortable. As it turns out, you didn't rush me to refine the second untamed world pellet because you urgently needed power. Your real goal was to come to the Yama Realm by yourself, she said with a cold snort. Why? Did you think I'd get in your way? Yun-Chi replied. Without you around, my trip to the Yama Realm went swimmingly well. Kayana Yinger suddenly giggled as a mysterious smile crossed her face. Speaking of which, I discovered something by coincidence when I was in the primordial profound arc. Yun-Chi's brow faintly creased. If it was something Kayana Yinger brought up deliberately, it couldn't be any ordinary thing. The primordial profound arc used to be owned by the Sword Spirit God clan, the clan which Hunger resided in during the primordial era. Could it be something that they had left behind? Kayana Yinger stretched a hand toward Yun-Chi as she slowly uncurled her fingers. Then, her fingers darted forward and flicked Yun-Chi's nose with no small amount of force. At number percent, Yun-Chi staggered backwards, his hand covering his nose. You poked me in the forehead just now, so now we're even. Kayana Yinger said as she folded her jade arms underneath her soft and ample bosom. She turned her face to the side and refused to look at him. Yun-Chi angrily flung out the hand that was covering his nose as he said in a deep voice, Yun-Kayanying, don't forget that I am your tool, right? I've never dared to forget that. Kayana Yinger's cherry lips parted as she answered him in a languid and indolent voice. However, you just tossed another untamed world pellet into this tool of yours, so now it's even more useful and valuable than it used to be. So you had better treat it with care. Otherwise, it'd be such a pity if you accidentally broke it because you threw an unneeded fit. Yun-Chi's face furiously twitched because he suddenly did not quite know how to respond to her. Enter the bone sea of eternal darkness with me, he shouted angrily before striding out of the hall.